Hey, Gothamites, what's going on? It's Eli, back with another review video, and yes, guys, oh yes, you yourselves read the title, and you know exactly what I'm reviewing. Something else Batman-related? And with this being something animation, yep. And of course, I, for quite a while, have been meaning to get around to this. And now the time had finally come for me to sit down, watch the entirety of this show. This brand new piece of Batman animation that came upon us where, yeah, because when we first heard about it, it seemed like it was not going to happen thanks to HBO Max, but luckily when Amazon Prime stepped in, yeah, they saved the day. Good for them. We love you, Amazon Prime, for what you did, resurrecting and bringing this for us to see in all of its glory. Yeah. So here we are, guys. I am now finally reviewing the first season from Warner Brothers Animation and, thanks to Amazon Prime, Batman, Caped Crusader. Yeah. Oh, yes. The entire season for me to review in one review. You, of course, saw, so yeah. So, the first things I have to say about this. Well, I'm sure for a lot of us, had been following this show for a while. Like, I remember when it was first announced that we were going to get a new piece of Batman animation material, and this coming straight from Bruce Timm. And yeah, because Warner Brothers Animation, and I'm also talking about some of background, you know, along with the first things I have to say. Yeah, Warner Brothers Animation, because they approached Bruce Timm, who had been a longtime producer of DC Comics, and with the idea of producing a revival of Batman the Animated Series, and set after the events of the new Batman Adventures, which ran from 97 to 98. Yeah. However, Timm, well, he refused to develop a Batman show that was a continuation of the animated series, and instead, he would have an idea to revive a DC animated universe. Yeah. And where, that would be Justice League, from 2001 to 2004 due to his because, yeah, like, his feelings, more could have been done there, but, well, Warner Brothers, wasn't really interested in reviving that show. However, after a discussion with James Tucker regarding the offer, Timm recalled several ideas that he had for the animated series that he was at the time unable to do to target audiences, and particularly having more of a pulp serial mystery film noir. Because, yeah, also when hearing that this specific new Batman animated show was going to have some film noir to it, sounded really cool, yeah. And hearing about the premise of what this was going to be like. And, well, because, like, yeah, with this idea of a mystery film noir, yeah, depicting of the characters and inspiring him to develop a new series based on those ideas, well, Timm, who decided to work with Tucker on the new series, that's when later would be informed by Warner Brothers Animation that enter J.J. Abrams of Bad Robot and Matt Reeves, whom having directed this, his own piece of Batman material, his own world of Batman, as we all know, yeah. Both of them were interested to work with him on this new show, and after which, well, Timm pitching them his ideas for the new series, which, impressed both of them, Reeves and Abrams. And that's just amazing to see both, great geniuses, Matt Reeves and J.J. Abrams, to do this. And keep in mind, because this is not the first time in the case of J.J. Abrams where he was involved in something DC Comics, because I'm sure, as most of you know, he was originally attached to work on a new Superman film, and this was before, say, Superman Returns happened, where he originally was involved in one idea for a Superman film called Superman Flyby, which, of course, that didn't come to be, and if you know about those details. Yeah. And by May of 2021, it would be announced that a new Batman animated series was in development. And yeah, because again, where I remember hearing about this, I'm sure the same goes for you. I even recall hearing that even Kevin Conroy was considered to be attached to this at one point. And originally, the show would have premiered on Cartoon Network and HBO Max. And Tim, of course, serving as showrunner on the series, and with the first season consisting of 10 episodes. However, in January of 2022, comic book author Ed Brubaker, I think I'm saying that right, had been announced to be serving as head writer and executive producer for the series, and Brubaker agreeing to work on the series due to his love for Batman. Well, that's good. Someone who loves and cares for the world and characters of Batman, he was perfect, a perfect choice. Picking the right people for those kind of specific things. And originally, because, not to mention, because, not only did he love Batman, Mr. Brubaker, but he also loved most prominently the animated series. Yeah, that's great to see. And originally, being approached, Tim to work on the show as a freelance writer, and thinking the writer's room was already hired Tim instead, Tim instead hired him as head writer. Gotta slow down. And and additional executive producers coming in, Tucker, including Tucker himself, and Daniel Pipsky, if I said that right, and Rachel Rush Rich, and Sam Register, I think I said that right. And by August of 2022, because like I said at the start, by August of 2022, and I remember this, you do too, where it was reported that the series would not be moving forward on HBO Max, and that of course went for Cartoon Network. It's totally obvious that after what HBO Max did, and most prominently Warner Brothers, because HBO Max coming from Warner Brothers altogether, flat out embarrassing themselves. And no offense to them, to those that made that decision, but I guarantee, because they made fools of themselves, right? And to think that they had, say, Kite Man on the way, them keeping that, I think it's obvious, whom the winner being. Golly. But despite Batman Caped Crusader not moving forward with HBO Max, well, luckily, it would continue with production and with it being shopped to other networks, like some including Apple TV, Hulu, and Netflix. And because they were all reportedly interested in picking up the series, but just 1 month after, the show was not going to be on HBO Max, with it officially beginning shopping, around networks, finally, Amazon Prime would pick it up. So, with it announced that Amazon would serve as the new distributor, and from there on, what a miracle that was. And definitely because it's totally obvious that originally Batman Caped Crusader was following in the same veins as some other, projects of Warner Brothers that they were shelving because of taxes. From this, something else of Scoob, Batgirl, and at first Coyote vs. Acme, and even before Coyote vs. Acme, The Day the Earth Blew Up. But most of them seen the light of day. You know this, I tell you, it's amazing. As much as I love Warner Brothers, it's obvious, it's the people. The people, and you know who, all right, I'm gonna stop there, because, But as I was saying with my first thoughts, but with talking about some background, because, me remembering where, the announcements made on what the status was for Batman Caped Crusader, but thankfully when Amazon Prime stepped in, that was great to see, and when the trailers finally came out, this looked awesome, and I didn't actually get around to watching this when it first came out. Just one of those that you sometimes just don't get around to, even if it's something really good like this. But eventually, and when I knew that at some point I was going to review this, which here we are now that I finally checked it out, it was excellent. The first entire season, all 10 episodes, they did not disappoint. The direction that, from, say, Bruce Timm, J.J. Abrams, Matt Reeves, all the writers and producers that I've just mentioned by name, with what they brought to this new piece of Batman animation material, with its premise, its storyline, its concept being set in like the 1940s with its noir take, with what the characters are brought to, just like, yeah, how they're specifically done. Of course, staying loyal and faithful to whom they're supposed to be. And the more I'm going to talk about it, because I really want to save it as I break down the show and with its episodes. Its animation, every single episode from 1 to 10, just excellent with their storylines, just need I go on. The direction for some of these characters, etc., etc. I tell ya, I had a great time with the first season. Absolutely, and I'm sure the same goes for a lot of you. Yeah. And also, because I mentioned Kevin Conroy, because, yeah, I recall knowing, and I'm sure you did too, that he was at one point considered to voice Thomas Wayne, but that sadly didn't come to be, because, yeah, and I checked where, yeah, Bruce Timm did confirm that they definitely had Kevin Conroy heavily in mind, heavily and such, but unfortunately it was too late. When he passed away, that was it, They weren't able to bring him in to do any voice recordings and for, whomever they had him in mind to voice. Again, I did at one point see him in the show's IMDb page, and if you did too, where he was supposed to voice Thomas Wayne. And if anything, like in one of these later episodes in the season where we have some flashbacks, but until I talk about that, don't want to get ahead of myself. But that would have been great. That would have been great if we had Kevin Conroy. Probably, more than likely, he wouldn't have voiced Batman, because, it's great where, he would, get to voice another character. Of course, throughout his voice acting career of anything DC, he's voiced Batman, but a few rare occasional times where he's voiced a different character, and you know this too. So, yeah. But, yeah, just overall, this new piece of Batman animation, with what Bruce Timm, J.J. Abrams, Matt Reeves, everybody brought to this, and it's just amazing. And the more I'm going to talk about it as I am now going to dive in / break down the show itself. Yep, overall, I really enjoyed this. I definitely did. I'm now hooked. And I'm sure the same goes for a lot of you. Yeah. Okay, so now with the first things I've had to say about Batman Caped Crusader done and out of the way, now, as always, read the description / the story. After a family tragedy, affluent philanthropist, if I'm probably butchering that word some, but yeah, Bruce Wayne would transform into Batman, where his crusade for justice spawns unforeseen ramifications. All right, now, with reading the description / overview of the show itself done, out of the way, now, of course, to break down the first season of Batman Caped Crusader itself. So starting with Episode 1, which being titled, In Treacherous Waters, description / the story. Batman finds himself in the middle of a turf war between rival crime bosses Rupert Thorne and the Penguin when a series of explosions rocks Gotham. Alright, so, with what goes down in the first episode? Well, with it beginning with someone called Clarence being questioned by someone in the shadows, and I think it's obvious whom we can tell is, by the shadows and all that. And just seeing only the outlet. Yeah, that's another word to say. But it is clear that business is about to pick up, and Batman would show himself at the warehouse and beating the goons, but it would end up, knocked back when an explosion rocks the warehouse. Yeah. And it would turn out that this explosion is the third one in 2 weeks to rock Gotham. And all three companies targeted that are linked back to someone called Rupert Thorne. And it would appear that, well, this could be the catalyst for an all-out gang war in Gotham, and if they're not careful. And, well, there's a new boss out there that looks set to cause some havoc. Yeah. Well, then Batman, he would soon find out that someone called Wilford Lee signed off the electrical work at one of the companies, so he would grab the guy late at night for some questioning, because, yeah, that was so great, and it's just kind of, just like how it was done in, say, Batman Begins, you know, pulling that one guy up, and he's upside down, and right here, because he's right there in the middle of where an incoming train is approaching, and it's obvious that that's gonna get him to talk. And yeah, of course, Batman's really not gonna kill him, right? Yeah, that's the thing. So yeah, he would finally admit, the man, that Penguin, by mentioning the name Penguin, put him up to this. Now Batman's got his answer. Well, and elsewhere, we would meet Barbara and Harvey in court. Yep. And the latter is running for mayor, that being Dent. And, well, he's his usual cocky self, and while he's still acting in character, and Penguin most certainly is not. And Penguin, whom, yeah, because right here in Batman Caped Crusader, for the first time ever, and to my knowledge, yeah, where, yes, Penguin is a woman. And of course, we know that Penguin's actual name being Oswald. Well, here, and because Penguin's a female, she's Oswalda. Yeah, I think I got that right. And Oswalda being voiced by the lovely, talented Minnie Driver. Yeah. Now, I will say, the direction that Batman Caped Crusader took, where one of these Batman villains, and in the case of Penguin, and Penguin being one of my top favorite Batman villains, the direction they took of making Penguin a female, I think I seem to recall people were very hesitant, I guess. Like, you know, mixed reactions and such. But I think it's obvious. Once the show debuted, and on account that this being the first episode, Penguin is the first villain to be the main antagonist of this first episode, and with Minnie Driver, the voice performance she delivers as the female Penguin, am I not wrong where that was pretty awesome? And you know, because, you know, everybody having their own vision of Batman. I mean, it's, no matter what, any different variation of Batman, it's still gotta be Batman. It's gotta stay true to the whole concept, and with whom Batman is, the world of Batman, the villains, of course. It's gotta be done, and these changes, they gotta make sense, and in the right way. And the direction they took with Penguin, you know, I think the ending result, and how I view it, did a not bad job. Just, yeah. And come on, Minnie Driver's a fantastic actress. And, you know, she's been good at doing some voice acting, like, hey, most prominently, for us Disney fanatics, we know her as the voice of Jane in Tarzan. So there you go. So just, yeah, I mean, with how much we've gotten of Oswalda in the first season, and with Minnie Driver voicing her, excellent, yeah. So, yeah, and just overall, I mean, I thought it turned out fine. The direction of taking Penguin as a female, yeah. Well, with our introduction to Penguin / Oswalda, and where she has her own cruise ship called the Iceberg Lounge, yeah, because it is a floating cruise ship, and, you know, rather than a club, and people, well, at the time of this episode, and at the start, you know, they love her during a big party, and little do the people realize that she's a criminal, yeah. So with the people loving her at the party, with the exception of Gordon and Barbara, because they remain vigilant, yeah. Yeah, because then, of course, you know, we would then get the usual array of people calling Penguin super smart, including Bruce Wayne, yeah, and whom does show up at the boat late at Penguin's party. Yeah, so, you know, very fitting, because we start off seeing Batman, but whom he really is, then seeing him just as Bruce Wayne, Oswalda, well, she isn't exactly subtle, speaking to Thorne and, well, pointing out that he could have been blown to bits in the last explosion. And it turns out that he received a tip-off, though, hence why he wasn't killed. And during the middle of the party, the Penguin would realize that she has a mole in her midst, and explaining the tip-off, and she would take the culprit into a box and would drop him literally into the freezing cold water. However, unfortunately, the real culprit takes off, but Thorne rejects him too. And, well, refusing to let him back into the organization. Instead, well, Ronnie would take off to see Barbara Gordon, and, because he implores her to help, and Barbara just does that, yeah. And driving off with him, and despite goons hot on their heels, that was a cool car chase scene right there, and how the animation's done there. Well, Batman, of course, would step in and stop them before Ronnie is taken to Commissioner Gordon. Yep. And to see the Batmobile make its first appearance, and in the first episode, yeah, the Batmobile, how it looks in Batman Caped Crusader, looks pretty awesome, yeah. And to take a moment to acknowledge the other voice talents, and as I was going to do, yeah, because the voice of Batman/Bruce Wayne in Batman Caped Crusader, who'd have thought that he would voice Batman? And that being Hamish Linklater, if I got his last name right. Yeah, he's a fantastic actor. You know, I've seen him in a lot of other great stuff, and I'm sure you have too. Yeah, with what he brings to the voice performance to both Batman and Bruce Wayne, and granted they are the same person, but still, you know, they're different from one another. Hamish does an excellent job. Yeah, not to mention where, fun fact, Hamish was very obsessed with the Batman animated series, which is a good thing, and, you know, I guarantee you, because, you know, could never have dreamed that one day he would be the voice of Batman in a piece of a Batman animation show, you know what I'm saying? Just like, yeah, that'd be anybody's dream. Yeah, and, you know, because, like, how he does Batman, I don't know, because it's, I don't know, giving me a bit of vibes, like, kind of almost mimicking, like, what Kevin Conroy brought to Batman, if you get where I'm going with this, okay? And I mean that in a positive way. I mean, you know, I guess that does show, because, again, the fact that Hamish was obsessed, and of course, a huge fan of the Batman animated series, and I have no doubt, because, you know, honoring the legacy, and with what Kevin Conroy brought to the voice performance of Batman. And, of course, to any other voice actors that have voiced Batman, yeah, I mean, they're all great, but let's face it, from them and, of course, Hamish can never top off exactly what Kevin Conroy brought, yeah. But just overall, with how Batman is brought to life in this is just amazing. With Hamish's voice performance between Batman and Bruce Wayne, and with the time and setting of this, and it's just amazing. There are really no words to describe. And the other characters, well, because, yeah, Harvey Dent. This is really cool. Harvey Dent in Batman Caped Crusader being voiced by good old Dietrich Bader, and who himself had voiced Batman previously in, most prominently, Batman the Brave and the Bold. Yeah. So it's really cool to see that he gets to voice Harvey Dent, and yeah, whom soon could become Two-Face, yeah. And, you know, because I knew, of course, ahead of time that, you know, him being the voice of Harvey Dent, but when listening to Harvey Dent's voice, it's like, my mind couldn't picture Dietrich Bader. You ever have those moments yeah. And I'll tell you what, because, you know, Dietrich Bader being such a fantastic actor on screen and when voice acting, yeah, obviously, with what he brings to Harvey Dent, excellent, yeah. And because, like, you know, Harvey Dent's personality and how some of the other characters, like, say, Barbara, how they feel towards him, and, you know, because some chemistry we see between Harvey and Batman starting in this episode, yeah, they seem to be on good terms, yeah. And yeah, speaking of Barbara, yes, Barbara Gordon being voiced by Crystal Joy Brown. Yeah, Crystal Joy Brown with what she brings to Barbara in this. And, yeah, doing an excellent job voicing Barbara. And also Commissioner James Gordon being voiced by Eric Morgan Stewart. And where in Batman Cape Crusader, they are portrayed being African Americans, you know? I mean, even Lego Batman did the same thing. And you know what? I think that what was brought to Batman Cape Crusader for those characters turned out really good. Yeah. And the chemistry that we would first see of father and daughter in episode 1, and from there on, really nice. And, you know, the position that Barbara's in, and, of course, you know, we know that very later down the road, with her becoming Batgirl, but with what she does first, really nice. Yeah. And also, some of the other characters in whom appears in the first episode. Yeah, because, those two guys that, yeah, because Thorne, most prominently, is acting, the son of Oswalda. You know, they're, him and Aaron, they're, yeah, because, well, Aaron most prominently, yeah, Aaron Cobblepot, duh, because, you know, the last name. Well, Aaron, of course, being the son of Oswalda, Aaron being voiced by Paul Scheer, and Rupert Thorne being voiced by Cedric Yarbrough. Yeah, that was cool to have them be in this, and the characters that, the two of them that they voice, good talents. And it's unfortunate because with what happens to one of them, as I just said, where, you know, one of them just getting thrown into a chest and being tossed into the freezing cold water, never to be seen again. Dark. But just overall, yeah, to have them there, that was great. And there's also Party Goer, whom Gray Delia voiced. And also we have two detectives from the Gotham Police Station, and yeah, because it wouldn't be Batman sometimes if we had those kind of detectives where they're assholes and how they view Batman. And man, because with these two, yeah, but the more I'll say about them as I proceed on. Detective Harvey Bullock, being voiced by good old John DiMaggio, a.k.a. Bender Rodriguez and Jake the Dog, amongst other great characters he's voiced, and Flass, I think I'm saying that right, yeah, Flass, being voiced by Gary Anthony Williams. Yeah, with these two, and with how much we get of them in the first episode, but then what comes for the next, yeah, makes you want to punch them, because, golly, the direction they go, but, you know, the more I have to say about them as I proceed, so, yeah. Okay, but to get back on point, because, yeah, well, and yeah, because with Detective Bullock, because, well, it turns out that Detective Bullock, he's actually working for Oswalda. See? Because, yeah. And as I said, I would proceed, yeah. And, yeah, and he would feed back at Roland is in the police building, and where Roland is laying out all the details to Barbara and Gordon, revealing it all, and, well, because it turns out that Oswalda, well, she has a long-range gun atop of the Iceberg Lounge, because on top of it, where it was basically an umbrella, but beneath that cloth that's supposed to be, you know, the umbrella, is actually a missile, a torpedo, and she points it right at the police building. And, well, that's when, yeah, Barbara and Gordon, they would, no time to waste, they would evacuate the building, and they all make it out just in time, right as that torpedo/missile strikes at the building. Yep. And, well, enter Batman, because he would make it to the Iceberg Lounge on his bat sub, yeah. And by the way, because, you know, when Bruce Wayne as himself made his way to the party, yeah, because Alfred Pennyworth, you know, brought him there. So, yeah, and when I'm done with breaking down the episode, I'll mention Alfred, you know, because I didn't mention who voices him. But, back on point, because, yeah, with Batman showing up, and despite defeating all her goons and putting up a good fight, well, the Penguin herself manages to get a shot off and, yeah, just, yeah, blowing up the police HQ, yeah, because, yeah, this happens, you know, the police station got blown up just right after when Batman stepped in, and, you know, even though it still targeted the police station, well, you know, at least Batman, he still defeated Penguin. Yeah, but thankfully, again, because everybody managing to get out, nobody died, and Oswalda, well, still out there for now. I mean, we saw that she got arrested, so, yeah. But, man, what a heck of a way for this episode to start off. That is for sure. Everything that, Episode 1, in Treacherous Waters, had to start off, where it all begins, is just amazing. Yeah, this was not a disappointment. What a great way for a new piece of Batman animation material being a TV series to start off, yeah. And of course, yeah, where, it's obvious. Next generation of Batman fans, and they have their own piece of Batman animation, an animated TV show. As I said early on, you get my point, yeah. With Penguin being the first antagonist of the first episode, the direction they took of Penguin being female, how we are introduced to these characters in this new world of Batman being brought to life in animation, and what we so far get to know about these characters. We know who they are, but still, the different kind of personalities that they would have in them. That's true. And with the two detectives, and the funny moments here and there, some good action, and the suspense, and with what the Penguin would do at the very end, having a frickin' big missile, targeting at Gotham City, at the police station. Oh my gosh, just overall, need I go on? The first episode of Season 1 of Batman Caped Crusader did not disappoint. Oh, and before I move on to the next episode, because I was going to acknowledge Alfred Pennyworth, yeah. Alfred Pennyworth in Batman Caped Crusader being voiced by Jason Watkins. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I've seen Jason Watkins before, but yeah. With Alfred, and in the first season of Batman Caped Crusader, well, the character of Alfred never disappoints in any, Batman variants and all that. Because we all know, of course, when it comes to the character of Pennyworth being such a loyal, faithful butler, and whom had been there and looking after Master Wayne since the tragedy of him losing his parents, Bruce, yeah. And with what Jason Watkins brings to the voice performance of Alfred and Alfred's animation design and look for this, really great, yeah. Alfred just, never disappoints being a great character in the realm of Batman. And of course, being there for his master, definitely. Alright, so, with mentioning Alfred, and yeah, now that I've finished on Episode 1, now to move on to Episode 2, which being titled, And Be a Villain. There are 3 dots at the start, but yeah, so, and be a villain. Alright, description / the story on Episode 2. When a glamorous movie star disappears, Batman and Detective Montoya, I think, yeah, I'm saying it right. Well, they find themselves tangled up in the dark web of a mysterious Avenger hunting the sound stages. Okay, now to dive in / break down Episode 2. So, with what happens? Well, it literally starts off where, yes, someone called Yvonne is grabbed outside of her house. We don't see who it is, but after that, the opening titles start. And yeah, to acknowledge the opening credits, for Batman Caped Crusader, really awesome, yeah, because kind of giving that noir vibe and such, you know what I mean? Because, yeah, and of course on account of the time setting of Batman Caped Crusader, there you go. Well, after that, because, yeah, well, Yvonne being a woman missing, and Bruce, when we see Bruce in this episode, being questioned by Detective Montoya. Yep, this is where Detective Montoya first appears in the show, and Bruce was apparently the last person that Yvonne saw, which was around, according to Bruce, at 10:52 p.m. And before Bruce can say anything else, enter Lucius Fox, whom shows and demands Bruce to keep his mouth shut, because with what Bruce was about to say, yeah, not a good idea, Bruce. Not thinking straight on that for a moment, yeah. And yeah, so it's great to see, Lucius Fox appearing in Batman Cape Crusader. And yeah, because Lucius just not being happy and would tell her that further questions will go through him, because he's the man, yeah. And now that Bruce believes that Montoya could be an asset, and by giving her the kicked off at the idea of a bribe, well, she's one of a few straight cops in town. And yeah, Montoya would then speak to the further she would be on this investigation. She would make her way to the film studio that resides in Gotham, where she would meet and speak with actor Mr. Basil Carlo. And yeah, whom being one of Yvonne's movie co-stars. And next, and who admits that she was apparently running with the wrong crowd, but he refuses to divulge much more. But however, when he claims to have not seen her in months, there would be a picture taken several days back that shows Carlo in the picture where Yvonne is present. And then when Carlo heads home in a hurry, Detective Montoya would find him in his house, and when she got word from, someone at the front gate of the film studio that he had left, and when asking for Mr. Carlo's address, yep, she would make her way there, and she would show up right after. Turns out that Mr. Basil was killed, with a knife sticking out of his back. And the culprit, because this culprit looks like it could be Clayface. Even I had a slight feeling too, yeah. And because whom does take off in the middle of the night and hightailing it over the rooftops. However, Batman would catch up to him, just try to take him down, chase him, and giving his been keeping an eye on this whole event. Of course he would, because he's Batman, And did I forget to mention that, he did put, a speaker, somewhere in Montoya's clothing? Yeah, but unfortunately Batman loses his trail, and because, even before that, because Batman did manage to grab a bit of the villain's cape, and in this scuffle, though, and, because checking it over in the lab, because, and finding entails on the back of MPW, which being short for Monoscope Pictures Wardrobe. That being the name of the movie studio in Gotham. And whoever this guy is, they have access to the studio lot. And that's not a good thing, because, there could be more killings, which, just so happens to come next. Because after killing the big boss, he would then find out that this is definitely Clayface. It is. So now we get Clayface in the second episode of Season 1. And Clayface, he's out for blood. And now, Carlo Basil, being this talented actor, but from those on the lot, he didn't have the right look to make it ahead, really be the main handsome lead and such. And, it's not Basil's fault. That's just how his face is, for anybody, And we would learn also more, because, Yvonne having worked with Carlo, half a dozen times, and Carlo, he had been obsessed with Yvonne for quite a while, and unrequited love on one side, and Carlo Basil was, he was so desperate to try and to prove his looks, and knowing that this could be changed, if possible, and for him to really be a full-blown movie star. Unfortunately, this does drive Basil to a lunatic common called Jack Ellman, whom, because he's a makeup artist on the studio, and, he promised some sort of treatment for him. However, Carlo is very clearly conned, and after losing some money 2 months back, Ellman was kicked off the lot by the big boss. Because we saw that visually. And with some background to his foe and how it ties directly into Carlo, it being explained, well, Batman and Clayface, we would once again see them square off. However, he would get the better of Batman and knocking down a whole bunch of rubble on top of him. But even before that, they did have a sword fight, because, you know, they got in one soundstage and there were a couple of swords, and yeah, there was a bit of a sword fight between Clayface and Batman. And the design and look of Clayface in Batman Cape Crusader looks pretty awesome, yeah. And yeah, just like I said, where the design and look of the characters with what was brought to them, just, yeah, amazing. I mean, they still got to be very true to whom they're supposed to be. So, yeah. But yeah, so after that, and with the rubble, you know, landing on top of Batman, well, underneath Batman does find two bodies, which being the bodies of Valentine and Manning. Yeah, because the two men from the movie lot, and them being stuffed in the basement, you know, very creepy sight. And jeez, because one of them, like, had a spider coming out of his mouth and on his eyeball. Golly. Oh, well, yeah. And Batman, yeah, because being concerned and giving Montoya only interviewed Manning an hour back, and, well, that means the killer is likely to zone in on her. Yeah, she'll be the next target. And given she's asking too many questions, well, Montoya doesn't get backup from her fellow officers. Well, that sucks. And naturally, and instead, would visit Jack Ellman by herself. Yeah, she's willing to do this by herself, taking the big risk. And at the same time, well, Batman realizing that the corpse of Basil in the morgue, I think I'm butchering that one word, but you know what I'm referring to, is actually not Carlo. Turns out not to be the actual body, because, you know, he poked at it, and it's not exactly how it's supposed to go with poking at such, because no, that is definitely not Carlo, with what Batman realizes and detects. So then what would happen next, and coming back to Detective Montoya, well, she would eventually be captured by Clayface. Yep, because Ellman, you know, not being Ellman at all, because technically by this point Ellman and Carlo being the same person, because it's Clayface, because knowing the character of Clayface can change into any shape or form. And yeah, because with Clayface revealing himself to Montoya, because, you know, as of now, he's been playing both Carlo and Ellman at different times. Well, Carlo would explain that the injection he received, which, yeah, Carlo is Carlo, but yeah, just now going by Clayface. But as I was about to say, because talking about the injection and that he received, and what he received was a miracle. And after fixing up his clay-like face with less wrinkles, he did approach Yvonne again, and that fateful night where she was snatched up that we saw at the very start of this episode. However, when he approached her, and with a new look and such, and she flat out rejected him, and that's why, thus, he would take her, yeah. And Carlo, because, well, he had been deceiving them all this time, and admitting that he's not finished yet, and he's got a taste of, you know, for murder, and realizing that being the villain is the part for him. Yeah, that does show. And then when Yvonne belittles him, I think I'm saying it right, belittles him for being fake. Because, yeah, we did see Yvonne early on where we saw her awake and where she was greeted by Ellman, and where she sees herself being handcuffed and chained, and when studio lights turn on, she's on a set. Well, what's going to happen next? And yeah, when we come up to here, we see exactly. But with what Yvonne is saying to Clayface / Carlo, Batman shows up, and yeah, fighting / taking on Clayface, and Batman using one of his batarangs to free Montoya, and yeah, who then turns and would free Yvonne from the deathbed, and also there was a swinging scythe that was coming down on her, yeah. And eventually, Batman comes out on top and yeah, would leave, and just as Clayface is taken into custody. However, Detective Montoya realizes that Batman has left A tracker, yeah, as I did describe, a device that Batman left in her clothing, which being a tracker, that Batman left on her, and where, yeah, because when she realizes this, she would speak into it, and promising the Caped Crusader that they're not done yet. Yeah, and Batman he seems to take this very well, but I think it's obvious, what's going through him, because, well, shit's gonna get real. Yep, now that, by the next episodes, they're now gonna be on his tail. But, yeah. That was another great episode. Yeah. And, of course, to acknowledge, the voice cast members, and those that, debuted in the second episode, Detective Renee Montoya being voiced by Michelle C. Bonilla, if I might be butchering her last name, but again, me sometimes. Yeah, with Renee Montoya making her debut in Batman Caped Crusader. Yeah, I've actually, been enjoying her character, and with how much we get of her in the first season, and so on. And with Michelle, with what she brings to the voice, and when we would see, by the next couple of episodes, that there is a friendship between Montoya and Barbara. That's great to see, yeah. And, it shows where, in this episode and from there on, because Detective Renee just, being such a tough detective, and her first encounter with Batman and with what would come next, just, yeah. And, the other characters, Yvonne, and it was really cool, because, yeah, and her being a pretty good voice actress, Lacey Chabert, yeah, and who was the very first voice of Meg Griffin from the pilot of Family Guy, yeah, but amongst other great things that she's done. But, yeah, point being is that with Yvonne and with Lacey, voice guesting in this episode of Batman Caped Crusader, well, it's Lacey. She's a talented actress, and with how much she delivered for the character of Yvonne was pretty good. And Lucius Fox making his debut in the second episode, and Lucius in Batman Caped Crusader being voiced by another great voice talent, Bumper Robinson. Yeah. Lucius being Lucius, because, yeah, it's important to how the character of Lucius is specifically portrayed and how much we've been seeing of Lucius in Batman Caped Crusader, and with Bumper's voice acting, what he brings to Lucius, that's great, yeah. And also, yeah, Basil Carlo, a.k.a. Clayface, being voiced by Dan Donahue, yeah, another delightful talent, and with what he brings to Basil/Clayface, amazing. And again, the design and look of Clayface, and on account of Dan Donahue's voice performance as Clayface, is great, yeah. And also, yeah, some of the other characters, Jack Ellman, whom, yeah, Clayface also takes the form of, being voiced by good old Jeff Bennett, who did do a voice in the first episode that I almost forgot to mention, Bill, yeah. Well, Jeff Bennett being another great voice actor, and with what he brought to the characters he's been voicing in Batman Caped Crusader, and of course, Jeff Bennett being no stranger to anything Batman, because most prominently, he voiced Joker in Batman the Brave and the Bold, and amongst other characters in the world of Batman that he voiced, and I'm sure you would know too. Yeah, Jeff Bennett, because what he brings to, the character of Ellman and the other characters he voices, Jeff Bennett's just such a great talent. And also Kimberly Brooks, another good voice acting talent, whom voices Ramona, yeah, good too. And there's also Alex Windham, who voices Edmund Haynes, and there's the character Daryl Manning, whom being voiced by Yuri Lowenthal, yeah, because being some of the weaknesses and targets of Clayface, all good too, just, yeah. Everybody that was in this episode, and of course to acknowledge, the voice cast, they're all excellent, yeah. And yeah, just to round things off, the second episode of Batman Caped Crusader and Be a Villain was another well-done put episode, and where we got Clayface, the mysteries, all that, which of course being a part of the character of Batman, because he is a detective, and with the clues, and when it's all put together, Turns out that in the end, Mr. Basil and Elman, they were technically the same person. I mean, there was an Elman, but he was killed off a while back. And with Montoya making her debut in the show, excellent. Just, yeah, overall. Episode 2 and Be a Villain was another great episode. Okay, so here we go. Now we come to episode 3, which being Kiss of the Catwoman. Mwah. Okay, description / the story. Why not? Selina Kyle turns to a life of crime as the daring Catwoman after her multi-millionaire father goes to prison, leaving her trapped for cash. Yeah. So yep, this is of course where Catwoman steps in, and whom guest voices in this episode, voicing Catwoman herself. Oh yeah, that was really exciting when I first heard, I'm sure for a lot of us, that holy crap, what's her face voicing Catwoman? Yeah. Yeah, which I'll mention her in just a moment, because yeah, where we start off in this episode, well, beginning with at the Gotham Museum, and yeah, Bruce being there and looking at the Wayne collection, Util his approach by one, whom of course being Miss Selina Kyle, and Miss Selina Kyle / Catwoman being voiced by the lovely, talented Christina Ricci. Yes, Christina Ricci. Just, oh man, because what a beautiful, talented actress she is, and, well, she technically has done some Batman stuff, like, she was a part of a podcast, something of a Batman podcast series, where she voiced Harley Quinn. But in this piece of Batman, she's the voice of Selina / Catwoman. And yeah, it's Christina, and with what she brings to the voice performance of Catwoman here, and where Catwoman debuts in the 3rd episode of Batman Caped Crusader, awesome, and I'm sure you would concur too. Yeah. We all love Christina Ricci, just such a talented actress, and yeah, she did not disappoint being the voice of Selina in this piece of Batman material in the realm of animation. Yeah, so, with her popping in, and she would obviously flirt with Bruce, and would encourage him to come out for a drink, but, of course, our Caped Crusader himself refuses, and then he would turn to someone nearby and would punch his lights out, and when he spoke something ill of his family, I don't blame Bruce on that, because, granted, who would not want to do that? I mean, it depends, I mean, for anybody who has something just like a fuse blows in your head and you just like, it just happens, it is what it is, yeah. Well, unfortunately, after this, this does capture the attention of the press, and a felony assault, being hung over, and, well, Bruce, for the time being, he has to do a few weeks of therapy with Dr. Quinzel. Yes, we get Dr. Quinzel right off the bat. And in the 3rd episode, wow. And yeah, of course, this is Dr. Quinzel before she's you-know-who, but what would come in just the next 2 episodes? Yeah. And Dr. Quinzel, being voiced by another lovely talent in this episode, Jamie Chung, talented actress, and I first knew her bringing to life Mulan in ABC's Once Upon a Time, and where, yeah, she technically was the first actress to bring to life Mulan, so there you go. But amongst other great things that Jamie Chung has been in, and that I've seen her in, and the same goes for you, and what she brings to Dr. Harlan Quinzel in Batman Caped Crusader, it's just amazing. Yeah, she totally did an outstanding job with what she brought to the voice performance of Dr. Harley Quinzel, aka Harley Quinn, in Caped Crusader. Excellent. Yeah. Well, by meeting with the Doctor herself, yeah, she would touch on his parents and presses the situation, but he zones out, And, well, he would think back to what happened on that very day in the alleyway all those years ago when he was a boy and seeing his parents being tragically killed. And yeah, because at times in the third episode, we would get to see that visually, seeing flashbacks of where, yeah, Bruce saw his parents murdered. And in this episode, we don't really visually see that because we only see the tape, making the shapes of his parents' bodies, the crime scene and all. But that's really cool with the flashbacks we get at times in this episode. Well, meanwhile, coming back to Selena, because, yeah, with her waking up in the mid-afternoon and neglecting all of her duties, yeah, including paying the bills and her disgruntled maid, whom being Greta. And that night, our Catwoman gets dressed up and begins stealing jewels and trinkets and intent on paying her way. Because, yeah, by seeing her in her Catwoman getup, where she called out to Greta if they still have a sewing machine. Yeah. And also, the fact that she has many cats, because Greta commenting that, she ought to stop bringing in strays. So, yeah, but hey, Selena just being a cat lover. Who can blame her, But in the case of her, like, in a not so very positive way, right? Well, with what Selena is doing and in her Catwoman getup, and the Catwoman getup that she has on in Batman Caped Crusader looks pretty good. Yeah. Well, with what she's doing, it doesn't take that long for Batman, of course, to step in / jump in into Catwoman's path, and, well, because Selena would then soon be arrested, and, well, she would play a part and blaming everything on Batman, and it seems to work. Even say, the two detectives, they were there, and when they, being in the middle of this situation, like with Selena / Catwoman, and yeah, because by taking off her mask, and they see it's Selena, so there you go. Well, Harvey Dent being there, he helps her out, of course he is. And Barbara, of course, not being happy about this, and, well, because, yeah, naturally, and, well, Selena is right back at it again that night where, yeah, Harvey managed to set her free. And, well, Batman, of course, being back to thwart her once more after a prolonged kiss and some banter, Selena would then take off without being caught. Yep. Then what would happen next? Selena, being on the run and just, yeah, leaving her big mansion alongside Greta, her maid, and all her cats, and they would end up in a rundown building, but Catwoman is not going to give up the hunt for long, and as for Bruce Wayne, well, he would continue on his therapy sessions, and with his character called into question with the numerous one-night stands he engages in, so yeah. And around this, well, we would see more flashbacks of Bruce's past, but, because Batman, he remains more determined than ever to put Kyle behind bars. And with him bringing in a photographer by the name of Bill O'Brien, this is where Bill O'Brien first steps in the show, and Bill O'Brien being voiced by SpongeBob himself, Tom Kenny. And of course, Tom Kenny being no stranger to anything Batman, because if you know, you know, the other past Batman materials that Tom Kenny has been a part of. Yeah. Yeah, so by bringing in Bill O'Brien to snap pictures on account of Catwoman, however, at the museum, Batman is not alone, because Catwoman once again showing up, this time with a big cat, which would quickly dispatch with sleeping gas. And as for Catwoman, well, Batman would patch up her leg after she's shot by those two dirty detective cops. Yeah. And, yeah, because, Bullock is the one that shot her. And even before that, because when Bullock and Fast, they were dealing with Catwoman, Selena got a good scratch on Bullock's face, Hope that's not permanent for him, just, But, yeah, so even, say, Batman, because, he actually punched those two detectives, and on account of the situation with Catwoman, so yeah, but what would come next after that, just, yeah. And with all this done, well, because he would once more visit O'Brien outside and confirming there's enough here to incriminate Selena Kyle. Might have butchered that one word, but yeah. But those pics of Batman beating up those cops, because, yeah, they aren't too favorable, and given they could cast him out as an enemy, like I said, we're just like, yeah, not good, and with him punching those two cops, the ending result. But in the case of Batman himself, he actually doesn't care. No, and telling O'Brien to just run with it, and before heading back to the Batcave. And Willis there, yeah, because he would speak to Alfred, and whom admits that these things are going to heat up now. But Batman just refusing to indulge his questions about Dr. Quinzel and her therapy. And, well, and as for Selina Kyle, because, yeah, she has now lost everything, including her maid Greta, where, yeah, we would now see Greta about to leave/depart for a cruise. Yeah, and even by this point, Greta has sold every single one of Selina's items and making a tidy profit. And again, hence, she's going to be going on a cruise. Auf Wiedersehen, Greta. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I had a feeling that probably in the case of the maid, Greta, something good would come for her, and where it would also be obvious that at a certain point in this episode, Greta's had enough of the bullshit from Selina, right? So yeah. And by the way, because of course, to acknowledge the voice of Greta, the other voice cast members in Episode 3, Greta being voiced by another great talent. I've seen her before. She's great. Jackie Hoffman. Oh, yeah, because how could you not recognize a voice in the case of Jackie Hoffman, right? With what we see of her as Greta in Episode 3, just excellent, yeah. And good for the maid, what she gets in the end, and, just leaving poor Selina behind, And the other characters in this episode, well, yeah, Yuri Lowenthal voicing Detective Cohen, and Gray Delia voicing a newscaster, and young Bruce. We would get a few lines from young Bruce in the flashbacks and where he's being questioned. Young Bruce being voiced by Santino Bernard, I think I'm saying that right, yeah. And one of the other flashbacks that we would see, to mention this, where Bruce just having a nightmare in his bed, just cannot get the visions out of his head of the sounds of the gunfire, and with, the crime scene of his parents, just, yeah. And where he, it's very disturbing when you say so, where he wakes up Alfred and letting him know that everyone's going to pay. And that, of course, being the start of when he would become the Caped Crusader / Dark Knight himself. That was very well done, but at the same time a bit disturbing because, well, it's obvious young Bruce would never be the same after that. Facts. Yeah. But yeah, overall, the third episode of Season 1 of Batman Caped Crusader, Kiss of the Catwoman, was excellent. Christina Ricci voicing the title character herself did an outstanding job because it's Christina. Everybody else in this episode, Tom Kenny also. Dr. Harley Quinzel making her debut in the third episode of Caped Crusader. Excellent. But what would come next for her? And seeing the flashbacks of when that happened, the events of young Bruce Wayne, his parents being murdered, just everything that came from Episode 3. Kiss of the Catwoman was another really good episode. And with it, yeah, centering on Catwoman and how Catwoman is specifically portrayed right here when she makes her debut in Caped Crusader. All right, now moving on to the fourth episode, titled The Night of the Hunters. Description / the story. Detective Renee Montoya is put in charge of the task force assembled by Mayor Jessup, hope I got that right, to catch Batman. This is where it's happening, yep. However, Gotham is put in jeopardy when Detective Floss and Bullock take matters into their own hands. Yeah, up to right here, with how much we get of them, up to the fourth episode, just them being complete dicks. That's for sure. Pardon my French, but it's very true. Like I said early on, where we have to have these kind of detective characters. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so where the Night of the Hunters starts off. Well, with the news of Batman's exploits and making its way all across Gotham. Well, the residents being twitchy and they aren't sure how to feel about all this. And as a result, well, a special task force being launched at Gotham PD to catch the Caped Crusader himself. You know, little do they realize, sadly, that Batman's really the hero. We, of course, know that, but the characters in the show, they do not. Yeah. And Commissioner Gordon, well, he would put Detective Montoya, we would see her in the 4th episode, put her in charge, and, well, they decide they're going to catch Batman, and by casting a wide net and posing muggings to draw him out into the open. That's exactly what they do. However, because Bruce/Batman, he's too smart, and, would soon figure out exactly what they're doing. Yeah. Little did they realize that Batman was way too smart than them to fall for something like that, because when we see them in action, like, some playing the part of the good guys and the bad guys, just like, the victims, I should say. Even when Batman did spot a few policemen, in a few cars, they were under the shadows, Batman did, good for him, did not take too long for him to put this all together, so yeah. Well, then Montoya would decide to up the stakes the next day, and by realizing that Batman is using the rooftops to get around, but it's obvious that Batman would realize that if they tried to make their way up to the rooftop, he would beat them to them. Yeah. I gotta slow down. Well, and there would be a big car chase, because, where actual bad guys are present, and, well, the police showing up, but again, Batman just being too smart and managing to evade them all. Oh, yeah, because, I actually did think of that when I was watching the episode, like, if those were actual crooks, but, no, apparently not. And we would once again see our resident photographer, Bill O'Brien, whom is still snapping photos, and where he's snapping the photos of the police being left with egg on their face and, just run with it on the news, which, it makes its way to the front page, and the Gotham PD are, well, they're a laughingstock. And the mayor, and whom we saw at the start of this episode, he made the announcement to the citizens of Gotham that they would catch the Caped Crusader. He is very pissed off about this and berating poor Gordon in his office on the phone, and while Harvey Dent is even making a big statement about it too. Yeah. And then meanwhile, we would once again see Dr. Harlan Quinzel, whom being brought in to shake things up, and they would realize that they need a masked villain to draw the Batman out. And Bullock and Floss, well, them being at it once again, because right here again, jeez. They took it one step too far. They did. And behind Gordon's back. Well, with them having heard enough, they decide to let an actual villain out, and which being none other than Firebug. Although they call him Firefly, but in Caped Crusader, he's referred to as Firebug, so, yeah. So with unleashing Firebug, and news of his unauthorized transfer does reach to Gordon. Thankfully, that doesn't take too long. And because him being shocked, and when he learns that the duo are up to, what they're up to and such, it's their doing. And as for Firebug, well, because he easily gets free when the dirty cops, they stage this entirely, a breakout. And Firebug would then head out to an apartment building, and where the place is set to ablaze by his doing. And because Firebug, his desire to set everything on flames, and even when he puts his goggles on, the vision he sees through those goggles, nothing but seeing everything in flames, the buildings, the civilians. That really shows you how psychotic Firebug is, and with his love and passion for fire and such. And that going for his character. Well, Batman, sure enough, would head on in to try and save those stuck inside. And while Gordon and Montoya, are not far behind. And, because, for Bullock and Flash, because though they end up inside the building set to flames to search for Firebug, because they have a task force with them. However, Gordon called out to all the other policemen and all to not do anything until he shows up to the scene. Yeah, but in the case of Bullock and Floss, they just proceeded on without hearing any orders from Gordon. Yeah, so of them going inside, and also O'Brien showing up and, well, managing to get a photo of the culprit, because, yeah, and with the place close to going up in flames, well, Batman would stop the armed guards that appear with the machine guns, and as they would spray bullets all over the place, and, yeah, because, not to mention that there are kids inside, and we see a few kids with their mother, yeah, and they're lucky that they didn't get shot, and, Batman saved their skins, yeah, and even telling them, like, a way to get out of here, yeah, going down the steps, and where it is safe a little to just proceed on through the building and where Batman points them to. And with the place almost going up in flames, well, yeah, all that, the flames just hungrily licking up the building further, and, well, Gordon and Batman, because when they would cross paths, in fact, they did, where, yeah, at some point early on in the episode, Batman was there at the police station, looking at the, chalkboard and what was written about him, getting some information, and where he would be chased by Gordon, But right here, because when Gordon sees that Batman was rescuing a couple of kids, yeah, with them working together and to escape through the laundry chute, saving the kids, which they were locked inside in the process, Gordon is, of course, he's not happy in knowing that Bullock and Floss being responsible for all this, again, having gone behind Gordon's back. But the press would spin this in a different way. Oh, jeez, yeah. And in fact, because, yeah, Bullock and Floss, and on account of the mayor wanting them to lead the task force from now on, and instead of Gordon, and, well, yeah, because them being praised for their efforts too, and Jim, he's going to be kept around, according to the mayor, for now. He does say those words, for now. And, well, and on account that, the mayor learned that Gordon did save those kids, but little does the mayor realize that, Batman helped too. But, of course, this is between Gordon and Batman. Because, like, a little early on, where we saw Bullock and Floss, like, their next move was to freaking shoot and kill Firebug. That's exactly what they do, because they know that Firebug is going to let out some information that Firebug has experienced, and on account of them. So they're not going to let that happen. They're going to keep it locked and sealed, like, not for the people to know about this, including the mayor. So yeah, just Bullock being the one to pull the trigger and kill and murder Firebug. He goes falling out of a window, and that's the end and demise of Firebug. And literally, when I watched this episode, I was like, well, so much for him. Yeah. But just like, yeah, this episode, I tell ya, that was amazing, and I'm sure, yeah, we've technically seen this before, where, in an early time of something Batman, when the entire, world of Gotham thinks that Batman is an enemy, and of course that goes for the police, and with them trying to gun down Batman, and with what this episode of Cape Crusader brought, was pretty well done, but it's, it's still frustrating, because, he's the good guy, because we've all been there, right, because Batman's the good guy, like, this is, like, can't they see that yet? There you go. And also on account that the many times, and when they thought he was a bad guy, Batman was taking on the other bad guys. Just being one of those things. And before I round things off, my final thoughts on episode 4, of course, to acknowledge the voice cast, and yeah, some of the voice actors in this episode, yeah. And I recognized a few, like, of course, yeah, Tom Kenny, but also James Arnold Taylor, who voices a Marcus Driver. Roger Craig Smith was also in this episode, as well as Corey Burton, yeah, and the voice of Firebug having been voiced by Tom Kenny, yeah. And with what he brought to the voice performance of Firebug, and just with how much we get of Firebug in this episode, pretty well executed, definitely. But yeah, just overall, Episode 4 of Season 1 of Caped Crusader, The Night of the Hunters, again, just so excellent, where, you know, we have something of Batman where we see it entirely centers on where the cops, the police force of Gotham, they're on Batman's tail, and when they think at that time that Batman is an enemy, and especially on account of the mayor, how he views Batman at first, and yeah, because the mayor of Gotham, being Mayor Jessup, yeah, because who being voiced by William Sailors, yeah, William Sailors being another talent, and with what he brings to the mayor, just, yeah. And when slowly but surely Gordon is starting to see whom Batman is, and obviously, because we know with this gonna lead up to where, you know, a pretty good partnership between Gordon and Batman, and, you know, the secret meetings that Gordon and Batman have, and then eventually, of course, when the Bat Signal steps in, yeah, all the above. Firebug, his appearance in this with his flames, and yeah, that moment where he went down and, you know, because he got some liquid, you know, gasoline, and igniting his flames, the demise of Firebug, did anybody see that coming? And, you know, when one of the stupid detectives, you know, killed him, just, my God, just hard to believe. But with how it was written in the show, amazing. Just like, yeah, but at the same time, what? Golly. Yeah, need I go on? Just, yeah, overall, Episode 4, The Night of the Hunters, was another great episode. Okay, now we come to Episode 5. Oh boy. And this being titled, The Stress of Her Regard. Description / the story. Batman and Barbara Gordon are set on a collision course when they each investigate the abductions of rich, powerful men in Gotham. Okay, so where Episode 5 begins? Well, Batman, we would see him at one point saving a man trying to kill himself in the middle of the road. And after Batman, he, you know, he caught someone and questioning him because he got him tied up to a pole, and them seeing, you know, what's going on with this gentleman out in the road just about to get himself killed, and whom Batman rescued is Fletcher Deming, whom being someone that has gone completely off the rails. And several weeks back, he donated, according to Batman, and while he's talking to Alfred, he donated his entire fortune to charity. So the only thing that he can afford right now is a one-way ticket to Arkham Asylum. And yeah, Fletcher Deming, whom he thinks he's King Tut. Yeah, that was great to see King Tut in something else Batman. And, you know, because, like, most prominently, you know, we've known King Tut in, say, the 60s Batman show. And I can't believe I didn't recognize his voice. Fletcher Deming, a.k.a. King Tut, being voiced by David Krumholtz. Yeah, and whom I most prominently know him, and this, I'm sure the same goes for a lot of you, you know, Bernard from the Santa Claus films, but, you know, amongst other, you know, great acting stuff he's done. And David Krumholtz being no stranger to DC Comics, where, yeah, because after this, him being in the Supergirl film, being Supergirl's father, you know, that's awesome. Yeah, and just before that, because doing this, like, that's great. So, with what's going on with Fletcher Deming, and, yeah, because a one-way ticket to Arkham Asylum, and, also, because the number of criminals that have been broken out in that place, well, yeah, with what Batman talks about and with what he learns, it makes it more of a pissed off than anything else. And Batman then realizing that there's something more going on here, and it does stem from another of the rogue gallery showing up, and which being, naturally, Harley Quinn. The direction that Cape Crusader takes, and when we first see Harley Quinn in this piece of Batman material, yeah. Well, this does, makes it complicated, and when we see Detective Montoya and Dr. Harley Quinzel ending up on a date together, I had when first seeing say each Harleen Quinzel, Montoya, and on account that they're linked with Barbara, because each of them are good friends with Barbara. Not to mention that Dr. Quinzel calls Barbara Barbie. I mean, not that I'm complaining, but that's very interesting. And hey, something like that coming from Dr. Quinzel, yeah. But as I was saying, where I had a feeling, and yeah, because turns out that Dr. Quinzel has an attraction for Detective Montoya. And granted, because that's technically a part of the character of Quinzel, where she's, bisexual and such. You know what I mean? Look on account of, say, the Harley Quinn animated show, where, she's in a relationship with Poison Ivy. There you go. So there, yeah. I think that, yeah, because with what's brought to each of the characters, Montoya and Quinzel, a bit of romance that starts in this episode for them, it's okay. I'm not complaining. What about you? Well, coming back to Batman, because, yeah, Batman does some further digging and would find Fletcher's hidden office, and with a whole bunch of checks made out to none other than the Doctor herself. And, yeah, because with Batman finding out and turning out that Quinzel is actually Harley Quinn. There you go. And it's very interesting because, yeah, this leads me to now say this, where we all know in many past variants of Batman, and the whole story, how this harmless psychiatrist, Dr. Quinzel, how she would be turned to the dark side on account of Mr. J himself, the Joker. But it does not happen there. I mean, at least that's what we think, and on account of the first season, right? And with where we're up to, just like, yeah. But my point being is that, yeah, it's very interesting that we see Quinzel already as Harley Quinn without the appearance of Joker, right? So that's pretty interesting. And I think that the take they do on account of her character, pretty well executed. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so, and alongside with her is Mr. Hastings, yeah, whom works for the Doctor. And Harley, well, because she has a whole bunch of men locked up and whom she's been torturing and billeting, if I'm saying that right, yeah. And we did get a small glimpse where we heard her voice and we saw a shadow line, an outline of her where she's speaking through a microphone, and we don't visually see it, it's like we're not sure if it's her, like, who is this mysterious woman? But yeah, when we find out it's her, just like, yeah. And then, coming to Alfred, who does some digging alongside with Batman, and realizing that there's a link with all those men getting psychiatrist visits and giving away all their fortune afterwards, but before eventually going insane. Yeah. And this, of course, being Harley's doing. And when Barbara would show up at Arkham Asylum to question Fletcher, he would hold on to Harley's name before running up to the rooftop and nearly jumping off, his doom. Because, yeah, I had a feeling that was probably coming, where, King Tut's attempt to make his escape, and you got Barbara on his tail, and when they make their way up to the rooftop, and yeah, King Tut was this close to killing himself, but with what he's in, piece of it, like, Barbara grabs a hold on, and those in Arkham Asylum, they would inject him, and where he would go to sleep, and just barely getting out Harley's name, yeah. Well, with Barbara now doing some digging, and when realizing that Mr. Hastings is linked to Fletcher. However, when she gets nowhere at his place, and with what she specifically says to him, and he will not answer anything else, like, I suggest you leave now. Yeah, closing the door. Well, yeah, she decides to break in after hours, where, she pulls over her car and walks on foot back to the building. And Batman showing up as well, and yeah, because Batman warning her off that, he's got this. Like, this is his doing. This is his job, his position. And yeah, because he'll take care of this himself. And yeah, while all this is going on at that building, well, Quinzel and Montoya, because yeah, they're on their date at a restaurant, but it has to be cut short, and on account that the phone call that the doctor would receive from Mr. Hastings. And, well, Quinzel would kiss Montoya, and Montoya just was very happy, because now she's starting to fall in love with the doctor. Yeah. Then coming back to Batman, because he would find all the men having been captured by Harley Quinn, and yeah, then, of course, she would show up in her getup and would try to stop Batman, and with her breaking out all the men, but despite getting the upper hand, Batman would find himself captured in one of the pods. Yep. And sleeping gas being ignited, and while the house is rigged to blow up in 5 minutes, yep, Harley Quinn had set a self-destruct system and all that, and when the time now came, because yep, the time now coming to for the whole building to be destroyed. Well, coming back to Barbara, because on her way out, and when she got inside, and yeah, because I gotta say, the other characters that we see and whom are being held hostage by Harley Quinn, very interesting, because yeah, Big Baby Man, and one whom is dressed up like a king, one whom is dressed up like an elf, trying to find one light bulb that's bad, in that pile of Christmas light bulbs, and a clown where we saw earlier he was getting his feet tickled to death, with a feather, and where Harley Quinn was trying to get him to talk. Yeah. And where she released all of them to try to take on Batman, and whomever, being the first one to defeat Batman, she'd be very happy in letting him off the hook, but yeah. So, with her and the others, exiting out of the building, and on account that she activated the self-destruct, yeah, because Barbara, with her sneaking past, and yeah, when she would make her way into the room to see Batman, she would attempt to break in, the pod and to rescue Batman. And when Harley and Mr. Hastings, they're driving away, well, Harley would spot Barbara's car and telling Mr. Hastings to turn back. And with her being there and just, yeah, she would try to grab Barbara and just telling Barbara to just leave Batman, but, her refusing, to leave without Batman, but, just not being able to still break him out. Like, a bit of the glass does break eventually, and when Harley, pushes the button to raise the glass, door, well, it's not going to proceed, because with how much Barbara's broke it by this point. And, well, the house now starting to blow up. The pod that Batman's in, it crumbles and it falls down into the ocean. But I think it's clear that Batman's gonna easily get out of there. And with Harley and Barbara trying to get out of there, Barbara just racing to the side and all. And, well, at one point, saw this coming. They would hold on to an edge of the building. Barbara holding on to Harley, but Harley... Harley tells Barbara to let her go, and that's exactly what happens. And yeah, actually they both fall, but yeah, Batman only saves Barbara, while Harley, she lands in the ocean, but clearly she did survive. Yeah, and Barbara just being devastated. The fact that she realized her best friend, Dr. Quinzel, turned out to be Harley Quinn, and just all this, and just being so heartbroken, and just, telling Batman to just shut up and just get out of here. And of course, yeah, he has to on account that reinforcements are coming in, and Batman just feeling very sorry for Barbara on account that what has become of her friend. Yeah. and that kind of person that, Barbara thought she was, but sadly not really the case. No. And, well, with us finding out that Harley is alive at one point, because Quinzel and Montoya's date had to be cut short, Quinzel, told Montoya that she would make it up, like go to a jazz club and such. However, at the very end, the detective's the only one there, of course. And out of nowhere, in a phone booth, the telephone would ring, and Detective Montoya responding to it, and it's Quinzel herself, and apologizing to her and saying that she's out of town, she'll reach out to her, and when she returns, all that. Yeah, it's a bit of a sad ending, because, on account that Barbara has realized whom her best friend really is, and for Montoya, because not seeing Quinzel again for a while, and little does she realize whom she really is. Like, God, how is she going to react to this? That's the thing, and we're up to in episode 5. Yeah. And where it ends off, just, I tell ya. Yeah. Yeah, just overall, episode 5, the stress of her regard, where we get to see Dr. Quinzel in action as Harley Quinn with no Joker, and like I said early on, it's amazing how it was done in this piece of Batman material, where we're first introduced to Dr. Quinzel as her alter ego Harley Quinn, what goes on with her and the schemes that she does, and with Batman and Barbara getting involved in the same case, and just everything that came from this episode. The more we see with these characters, where we're up to in episode 5, a relationship that kind of slowly but surely builds between the detective and the doctor. Just overall, episode 5, the stress of her regard, another excellent episode in Caped Crusader, in the first season, that is. Okay, now, moving on to episode 6. Which being titled Night Ride. Description / the story. After a series of robberies in Gotham, Batman wrestles with the possibility that the culprit might be from beyond the grave. Meanwhile, Harvey Dent's morality is tested. A generous campaign donation comes in from a most nefarious source. Okay, so in the sixth episode, Night Ride, well, we would start where we see a strange, ghostly figure on horseback showing and capsizing a van full of charity money. And it wouldn't take too long for the news of this to hit the press. Yep, and with Bruce checking over the story in the papers, and Bruce, he is convinced at first that this is just a lunatic in a mask. And he's not the only one whom is checking the papers. Harvey Dent is also. Yeah, because with him checking the papers and him not being happy about the current smear campaign against him and claiming that he's buying out the election himself, well, with Dent slipping in the polls, Mr. Thorne, Mr. Thorne, the more we get of him, would show up and would speak to Harvey outside in his car and telling him to strike a deal, and if he wants to get back into the game. So, yeah, and if Harvey cooperates with all this, and knowing Mr. Thorne. Well, and then Batman, of course. Batman would begin an investigation and trying to work out exactly why this masked Ghost Rider is targeting specific areas. And when he would strike, Batman is back on the scene and would chase the ghost through the streets of Gotham, and he does notice a crest on the man's back. But beyond that, and disappearing into a wall, Batman doesn't have a whole lot to go on here, and, well, ending up at something of a dead end, And Batman, because, Batman / Bruce Wayne, and when, because, again, he first thinks it's just a lunatic in a mask, and refusing to believe that this is a ghost. Batman at first not believing in the whole paranormal stuff. Well, despite Alfred's insistence, even Lucius Fox was kind of in on this too, because, Batman deciding to try and get some answers and up at the Old Heritage Hill. And Lucius, he would show up while Bruce hits the library to do some digging. And the librarian, whom does know Bruce. In fact, she knew Bruce when he was a boy and when his parents were still alive. And according to her, Bruce having always come to the library alongside with his mommy. So, yeah. And according to her, because Bruce being interested in the whole medieval and knights, and she can see that that's not changed in him. Yeah. With the librarian recognizing the coat of arms, yeah, because with what Bruce is trying to find, it's not there. And when he would show him when he would show her the symbol, and well, this apparently just so happens to belong to the Crusader family, and well, they were one of Gotham's most founding families, well-known families in the city and all. And well, their name was struck from the history books due to James Craddock's actions. And during the Revolution, according to the librarian, he was a regular gambler and squandered the fortune and nearly losing Heritage Hill as a result. And, well, he would blame democracy for his woes and eventually was hung at his old town gallows after acting as a highwayman. Because, according to the librarian, most prominently, she puts that, he started to act like a Robin Hood, but not the Robin Hood you would think of, where, yeah, the whole thing of Robin Hood stealing from the rich and giving it to the poor. No, that's the opposite. He would steal from the rich, and what he would take from the poor, he would just keep it to himself. But yeah, with him eventually getting caught and where he would get hung, so yeah. And with the history lesson completed, well, Lucius, coming back to Lucius, because yeah, finding himself confronted by Craddock, and, the one who is none other than, the Gentleman Ghost. Oh, yeah. Gentleman Ghost, his appearance in his first episode of Batman Caped Crusader was awesome. And keep in mind, if you know your history with the DC Comics, most prominently, Gentleman Ghost is an arch enemy of Hawkman and Hawkgirl, but his links being very heavily coming from, the realms of Batman and such. If the history and origins and all that when it comes to, the villain Gentleman Ghost and his links with each Hawkman and Batman. So, there you go. And, because of, plenty of other Batman materials where, it's had Gentleman Ghost. I do recall, in the Lego Batman movie, Gentleman Ghost makes an appearance, being alongside with all the other Batman villains that Joker brought together. So there you go. But yeah, and to mention a couple of other stuff, and before I continue on point, because, it was really cool, because when Batman first encountered Gentleman Ghost, and where Gentleman Ghost, he got on board a train in Gotham City, and where Harvey was on board, and Gentleman Ghost stealing the wallets and fortune from the people on the train, and Harvey, he just flat out allows this, and where he tries to bribe Gentleman Ghost just to tell Gentleman Ghost to leave everyone alone. Just with what goes on and with what Harvey specifically does, it does not make a good impression on him. And, for the press, what I'm saying, in front of those people. And yeah, just where after Gentleman Ghost disembarks the train, then where Batman coming in with his Batmobile to chase Gentleman Ghost on his noble steed. Oh, that was great. Yeah. And Gentleman Ghost being voiced by Toby Stephens, and with what Toby Stephens brings to the voice of Gentleman Ghost in Batman Caped Crusader, did an excellent job. Yeah. I definitely got a kick out of Gentleman's Ghost appearance and look. Because, like I said, again, where the looks and designs that were brought to all of the characters of, from Batman and Caped Crusader, really awesome. They've got to stay very true to whom they are. But at the same time, with some tweaks and changes to their appearance and looks, in every variation of anything DC Comics, you get the point. Like, it's got to be good, and it's got to make sense in the right way all together. Yeah. And Rupert Thorne, because I've mentioned him early on, just to go ahead and mention him again, because Cedric Yarbrough, who voices Rupert Thorne, and having done a couple of other voices, but most prominently voicing Rupert Thorne in Batman Caped Crusader. So yeah. And also the librarian that Bruce, encounters with at the library, and where she becomes very helpful with Bruce. That being Wilma. Yeah, that being the librarian's name. Wilma being voiced by Gally Heldeman, if I'm getting the full name right. But yeah. And also Kari Walgreen, another talented voice actress whom voices a guard in this episode. Yeah. So, of course, to acknowledge the other voice cast members, those that are in this episode of Caped Crusader. Okay, but to get back on point, because, when it comes to Gentleman Ghost appearing, and, Lucius encountering him, Batman, of course, showing up, and he and the Ghost would duel it out, but, well, unfortunately, things don't go exactly as planned, and when Cradock / the Gentleman Ghost would dip out without so much as, a single shot. And when Batman was trying to punch Gentleman Ghost, when he aimed for Gentleman Ghost's face, he gets his hand frozen. His hand freezes when he, went through Gentleman Ghost's face. That's pretty interesting. I mean, on the contrary, because with ghosts being cold, so there you go. Well, and after Gentleman Ghost disembarks and warning Batman that, don't expect any mercy the third time that they cross paths, all that, well, Batman would concede to Alfred's idea of being a cost and, and deciding to go and visit Linton Midnight, if I'm getting the last name right specifically, but again, you know me sometimes, whom being a man who could hold the key to stopping his apprehension, And because with seeing Linton in this episode, and Linton just having no problem that Batman is present, well, he would reveal that Batman basically needs to burn the claim to Heritage Hill and the blood of a nobleman too. So, and this magic, because it will be enough to fight back and to stop Cradock, aka the Gentleman Ghost. And in exchange, well, he is to fill a vial with something when the time is specifically right. Yep. So then, what would happen next? And with the deed grabbed, well, Bruce would then find that Alfred actually has noble blood and can be of use for this ritual. So both of them would be at a cemetery, and Alfred would burn the bloody dead in the graveyard, which, because it does the trick, because, again, with them being in the graveyard, with them doing so, and with saying some specific words, and Alfred cutting himself a little to drop a few bits of blood, well, this could do the trick, or does it? Well, what would happen next? There is still a little bit left from that piece of paper, and the ghostly apprehension would affect Alfred, and the pair end up dueling it, because, Gentleman Ghost stepping in will stop at nothing with what they're doing, and because Gentleman Ghost then taking possession of Alfred, and this was really interesting, because the Gentleman Ghost saying this to Batman, that Alfred's trying to keep one secret safe and sound, and not for a Gentleman Ghost to know. And I think we know exactly what that is, right? Batman's identity? Oh yeah, how could it not? Even a moment where Alfred snaps out of it, and where he pleads his master to kill him and just to stop Gentleman Ghost, but there's no way Batman's doing that. He already lost his parents. He's not losing one more family member, and that being Alfred, because it's true. Alfred is family to Bruce. Yeah. So, just overall, because thankfully, and to speed things up some, because Batman, he would burn the last bit of that deed, that piece of paper being the deed, and by saving Alfred, and then would hand over the dial to Linton when he shows up. very interesting in the getup he has, white getup. Because, yeah, Gentleman Ghost being defeated and Batman retrieving Gentleman Ghost, whom at one point became a, black cloud, which, yeah, that's what led to him, taking possession of Alfred. But this time, and when Gentleman Ghost is defeated, he would then be in that vial. So, yeah. And, yeah, so, with this having happened, and, yep, because now that he's in the vial, and who, now, having Cradoc's essence stashed inside, all that, and, yeah, even Linton mentioned to Batman that he probably doesn't want to know what he's going to be doing with Cradoc, and probably for the best, yeah, but maybe it's not the last we've seen of Gentleman Ghost. I wonder, yeah. Well, and as the episode would then close out, because what would happen last? Well, the incident on the train, as I mentioned, well, yeah, which we saw Dent handing over money to Cradoc, and where, just, again, he was trying to help out to, tell Gentleman Ghost to spare the people. Well, because, yeah, and like I said, where this would not make a good image for him, and for the press. Yeah, well, this sees him drop in the polls further, and with little other choice, well, that's when Dent would now officially decide to ring up Thorne and, yeah, get the upper hand. So, yeah. Well, Dent didn't really think clearly, because with what he did on the train. Because, with what he was trying to do, I get it, but not in the best way. Yeah. But, yeah, man, that was a really good episode. With what Episode 6, Night Ride, had to offer, and where in this episode, we've got Gentleman Ghost being the main antagonist, this being his first episode, and with how Gentleman Ghost's design and look is, and the world of Batman Caped Crusader is really awesome, yeah. And just his ghostly appearance on his noble steed, knowing the backstory of Gentleman Ghost, and whom he really was, yeah, Russell Cradoc, and also the appearance of Linton, whom, also being voiced by Cedric Yarbrough, yeah, whom voices Rupert Thorne, yeah, to see Linton appear, that was really awesome. And all the other characters, the librarian, whom, has a good connection with Bruce when he was a boy. And yeah, just overall, everything that came from Episode 6, Night Ride, was another excellent episode in Season 1. And also, I didn't recognize his voice, but one of the characters in that episode, Gorman, yeah, being voiced by Jason Marsden, yeah, no stranger to Batman, because, most prominently, he had voiced Firefly and all in The Batman from the early 2000s, and amongst of other Batman stuff that Jason Marsden has done, like I also, I don't know how many of you know this, where he actually portrayed a young Burt Ward in a biopic, because, yeah, Return to the Batcave, if you've seen that. So, yeah, he played / portrayed a younger version of Burt Ward, so, yeah, that was pretty cool. But just, yeah, again, overall, Night Ride, the 6th episode of Season 1 of Batman Caped Crusader, I really enjoyed it, yeah. Alright, now on to episode, 7. Yeah, 7 fingers. Which being titled, Moving Target. Description / the story. Detective Montoya vows to do everything in her powers to protect Commissioner Gordon following a botched attempt on his life, and Batman's investigation would lead him to realize that no one can be trusted. Yeah, in a situation like this, yeah, and with what Batman detects, oh, great. Alright, so, in Episode 7, Moving Target, well, the first thing we see is, yeah, with all over the courts, and with Barbara getting her morality code on with her father, and Gordon not being happy that Barbara helped a criminal off in the court system. But she would argue that the cops should have done a better job getting evidence on him to keep the guy behind bars. Yeah, that can be true in some situations. And, well, Gordon, because he would point out that the black and white way of right and wrong. But, well, it all comes down to a head when a gunman does show up outside and would target Gordon. But thankfully, because, yeah, he's stopped, but it's clear, yeah, because he was shot and gunned down, it's clear that this is a symptomatic of something much bigger in the works here. And the culprit happens to be someone called Floyd Lawton, who being a local who works contract jobs, and it's still unclear who specifically hired him, but there is a hit out on Gordon. So Gordon's life now being at stake. And, well, coming to Bullock, who wants to hit back hard, but however, Gordon, he's not so sure. Yeah, I of course would concur with him on that. Then Montoya and Barbara, both of them believing that he needs to hide out in a safe house for the time being. However, Gordon flat out refuses and deciding to stick with his work in Gotham, but Barbara complaining and calling her father selfish for wanting to do his job. Yeah, but, well, I mean, when, Gordon just, it's just natural for Gordon where he thinks that he can handle the situation, and, he's got himself with a gun, but what are the chances, really? Because, obviously, deep down, and later in this episode, he would come to fruition that, he occurs with his daughter, so yeah. Well, Batman showing up to see Barbara, and we would see that a couple more times in the last 3 episodes after this where, he just pops in Barbara's office unannounced, and yeah. But with him showing up and pointing out that the hit seems to have originated from the Blackgate prison, and there's a long list, according to Batman, of possible suspects, but it definitely seems to be very personal. Whom could it specifically be that just wants to have Gordon's head? I wonder. Well, and Batman then showing at the prison, and at one point, because he had to, knock out 2 guards, then beginning to ask questions, and yeah, because with him busting some heads, and as I said, and, well, finding out that there's a guy in solitary by the name of Mueller. And after the botched attempt, well, there's a whole bunch of pros coming in, according to Mueller, and that want to try and do this the right way. And that includes none other than the I'm probably going to butcher this name some, but Onomatopoeia. Probably, but again, as I said, I was probably going to butcher him, but you know who it is, of course, yeah. And with Batman beating Mueller and demanding him to reveal everything, and while, yeah, because with how much Mueller's told him, and while Gordon, well, because him eventually being taken in by Barbara and the other cops, and one of them, of course, being Detective Montoya, they would try to keep Gordon safe, and and when Gordon showed up to his neighborhood, they were right there at his front door, and again, he would finally come to terms slash fruition when, because Gordon should think about his fellow neighbors and the children with what they specifically say to Gordon, and even when there's a moment where Gordon looks at the other side of the road and seen a couple of kid toys like a little tricycle, yeah, this is for real, because as if Gordon is really going to risk letting his fellow neighbors and the children in the neighborhood to be gunned down, just, yeah. So again, deep down, Gordon realizing that you're right, because this is not looking too good, and there's no way that, he's going to let his neighbors get accidentally gunned down. Yeah, when they're after him. Because they don't need to get involved in this anyways, and for their protection. Well, with them getting out of there, and despite the car at one point getting attacked, and an altercation with some of the foes, well, Gordon and the others would seek refuge over at Wayne Gardens. Yeah, when they see that sign, Wayne Gardens, they think that, they could probably be safe. And as they would hide out in one of those houses, Barbara would get a taste of her own medicine when Detective Montoya would call her out for being out of the real heart of Gotham. And given that she had a decent house on the other side of the river of Gotham, But before that continues on, well, Omontafia does show up with a bunch of his goons outside, and resulting in a big firefight to break out. But of course, Batman showing up, and even before that happened, because that car chase, well, eventually they managed to take care of those two goons. Their car would go off to the side of a cliff. And were they, they were pretending to be policemen. They were in a police car, but, it didn't take too long for Gordon and the others to realize that it wasn't any of their men in that police car. Yeah. And even when Gordon first thought that was, transportation, because a police car that would be behind, with what they specifically say. Yeah. And also because with seeing the main antagonist of this episode, where, yeah, I mean, I've seen him before, and with the dialogue he has, it's just like, the sounds and all that, because, bang, 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 squirt, squirt, just like, that's awesome, yeah. And if any of you, of course, being familiar with that specific Batman antagonist, and if you've read any of the comics that have him, yeah, so it's really cool, because with how they've incorporated him into Cape Crusader, what they've brought to him, just, yeah, that's awesome. And for any of you that's seen him in any other past Batman materials besides the comics themselves, yeah. So, yeah, Batman, of course, showing up, to get back on point, and while he would fight the goons and the main antagonist, an inside fight with, Gordon happening with the goons and the others, and Batman coming out victorious, how many of the goons he's taken down, and as does Gordon and the others, just, yeah, and as the contract is canceled with what Batman told them. And it turns out, according from Batman, what he says to Gordon, that, the real hit was actually not on Gordon, but his daughter. Interesting twist. I mean, it didn't seem like it. We weren't getting any vibes almost throughout the entire episode that they were really after Barbara. It's one of those things done very well. And yeah, because with Gordon saving his daughter before being killed as hit against her, and while Barbara, because yeah, she would knock the crooked cop whom was with them and turned out to be a traitor, yeah. Barbara would then show up to see Mueller, who, because after all this is taken care of, the bad guys being brought in, and that crooked, cop who betrayed the ways of the law. Well, yeah, Barbara showing up to see Mueller, and who was, in fact, the person whom Barbara worked to get a good deal for behind bars. But him not being happy, and with him lashing out, and, well, this eventually would see Barbara concede and realizing that some people do deserve time behind bars. Yeah, because, it all depends on that person, human being, if they seem to have good heart, and if they deserve justice, but some that, they don't have heart. They just flat out deserve to be behind bars. And, well, Mueller being a good case right here, so there you go. But that was, that was another excellent episode. And yeah, because, I feel because I feel like from episode 6 to 10, yeah, these last batch of episodes, to me, were some really good ones. No hard feelings on the first 5 episodes, no, because all of the 10 episodes, fantastic, but the more I'll have to say, and even when I round things off with my final thoughts, yeah. But just, yeah, overall, again, episode 7, an excellent episode, moving target with what happens in this specific episode, where we have Gordon, but it's really Barbara being targeted and having to run away from the criminals, and whom the main antagonist is behind the mask. That was awesome. The twist where it's not Gordon, it's Barbara whom is the target, a crooked cop, and, all this, just, man, that was another great episode in the first season. Oh, and of course, to acknowledge the voice cast members in episode 7, well, the main antagonist wearing that mask, yeah, being voiced by Rid Scott, and with the words that he has, as I said and described, just, yeah, brilliant. Mueller being voiced by Peter Gisop. Might have butchered the last name some, but you know who it is, I'm sure. Roger Craig Smith, who voices the crooked cop, Corrigan. Yeah, he also voiced a hitman and a henchman number 2, and so did Peter Gisop. Yeah, he voiced henchman number 1. And James Arnold Taylor voicing one of the other cops, Marcus Driver, and he also voiced a client. And Marcus Driver, he took quite a beating, because when they were getting chased and before they made to the location of Wayne's, he got severely wounded, and he's lucky he managed to pull through, and eventually when the madness finally came to an end, and where, yeah, medical attention arrived, an ambulance and all, so good thing that Marcus did survive in the end. And, despite having him struggling and just kind of passing out, but, it's good that he turned out fine. Alright, guys, well, we only have 3 episodes left, so now we come to the third to last episode of Season 1 of Batman Caped Crusader, Episode 8, titled Nocturne. Description / the story. When children start going missing at a Harvey Dent campaign event, Batman's sleuthing into the underbelly of a local carnival, hosting it uncovers something far more sinister. Okay, now to dive in Nocturne, because, well, this episode starting off where we see 2 kids in an orphanage, and one of them getting the other one to wake up and to sneak out to look at a nearby carnival in the distance, not far from where they're at the orphanage, and the pair would then be greeted by a strange girl whom, just like the getup she has on makes you think, like, is she cosplaying as Wednesday Addams? But not really. And she would lead one of the kids, whom being a boy by the name of Dickie. Dick Grayson, I wonder? I probably wouldn't think that. Just probably a coincidence. Anyways, so by leading one of the kids named Dickie inside a dark trailer that's in the carnival, and while the other boy, Jason, because he's just left there to watch from afar, when that girl leads Dickie into that trailer, that's the last we see of him for now. Yep. Well, then, meanwhile, Bruce Wayne would show up with his date Julie to mess about with the fair games, and he would speak positively with Harvey Dent showing up, and because more that we see between Bruce and Harvey, and of course we've seen it before in past Batman materials, they have at times had good chemistry, and somewhat of a pretty good friendship, and with what we see here in Batman Caped Crusader, and by the next 2 episodes, oh boy, but wait until I mention what happens at the end of this episode. It's like, okay, but back on point, because with Harvey Dent showing up, because and who soon would, because he would be there for a photo opportunity with a bunch of orphan kids, because those orphan kids, they did show up, at the carnival. And inside one of the tents, and that Bruce and Julie would attend to, being an experiment involving a girl named Natalia, whom turns out to be the same girl. And even I knew right away that it was the same girl whom we saw earlier, but in different wardrobe and what she did to her hair. With this taking place and her being taken inside a glass cage and an experiment to make her super strong, and to lift a great big lift, heavy weight and such. This would cause her, be able to lift the huge weight and so on, because, then what would happen next, and it went pretty well, Jason, being one of the orphans, who we saw from the previous night, is in the crowd, and he would speak with Natalia after, and wanting to know where Dickie is, because, the last time that Jason saw Dickie was last night, and, he never returned. Well, Natalia would guide Jason into her trailer, and where out of nowhere, she would begin sucking the essence out of him. Yikes! Who is this gal, I wonder? And the scientist, whom turns out to be the older brother of Natalia, Anton. he would stop her and would tell her that they need to fly under the radar. And, these two, because with them being siblings, and, well, with him eventually conceding, and making her promise that he's the last one, that, Jason is the last one what she just did to him. However, he's not going to be the last one. I think that would be obvious. As Natalia would next decide to lead another orphan by the name of Steffi, this girl, and by pulling her away from the main crowd, and to take a moment to acknowledge the voice cast. Oh my gosh, because I had no idea, nor did I recognize their voices in this episode. Yeah. Natalia, who would be technically the main antagonist of this episode of Caped Crusader, being voiced by the lovely, talented McKenna Grace. Yeah! Good for her being in something Batman and doing a voice. Yeah, with what she brings to the voice performance of Natalia, well, this is McKenna Grace we're talking about. Have some respect, come on. Such a amazing actress. And be no stranger to voice acting from what we've seen, her also doing. But overall, point being is that with what she brings to Natalia and with what the character of Natalia is like in this, just amazing. And her brother, Anton, I didn't recognize his voice either. Haley Joel Osment, yeah. And I think as I recall, Haley Joel Osment, he's done some DC comic stuff before. Yeah, and I'm sure you know too. But yeah, with him voicing Anton, that was great too. The chemistry that they bring to their characters is just great. Yeah, absolutely. And to acknowledge the others, of course, Julie, of course, I recognize her voice, Grey Delia. Yep, and she also voices one of the members of the circus, the Bearded Lady. Okay, I did not recognize her voice as the Bearded Lady. Did you? And some of the others, the kids. Dickie being voiced by Carter Rockwood, Jason voiced by Henry Witcher, Steffi being voiced by Amari McCoy, and there was also Carrie being voiced by Juliet Donefeld. Yeah, I've seen her, another good talent. And there was also Morris, and two characters, Morris and Matt Milligan, whom both being voiced by Sung-Won Chow. And there was also Leslie Tompkins, whom being voiced by Donna Lynn Champlin. And the other characters, because Gorman once again showing up, Jason Marsden, and Tony Zito being voiced by Vincent Piazza. I think I'm saying that right. Yeah. And also, Jason Watkins, who voices Alfred, he voices a character in this episode called Carnival Barker. So, yeah. But of course, to acknowledge the voice cast of this episode. But, okay, getting back on point. Because we would then see Mr. Thorne being at the carnival. Yep, because him just so happening to be in attendance at the carnival, and, well, while he sorts out another shady donation for Dent. Yeah. Well, Wayne would allow himself to be beaten by the carnies so as not to give away his disguise that he's Batman. Yeah. And when he would regain consciousness, because, when he was trying to help out and search for the lost kids, those members of the carnival thought like he was a creep, and jeez, because that's not good seeing Bruce getting beat up. Just don't they know who he is? I don't know. I mean, obviously they're traveling and they've made their way to Gotham, I guess. But yeah, so with him regaining consciousness, and by this point, when he regained consciousness, the carnival's now closing. And, well, thus, Bruce would make his way back to the car where Alfred is, donning on his suit, and, of course, would head straight back into the carnival, to search the place. And, and, of course, then it would lead to him beating those previous carnies to get crucial info. Yeah, serves them right, because now, him as Batman, he beats them down. However, it's unfortunately too late for Steffi. Yep, because again, where, Steffi was brought in by Natalia, and as Batman, because, he would go searching for her. Well, Dent, he would receive his dirty money, but in exchange, he's forced to let a criminal called Milligan go. Yeah, hence Milligan, as I mentioned, and whom voices him. And Batman, well, he would at one point find Anton in a rough way, because, well, he would admit that Natalia has a rare infection, and where she has to drain others to stay strong, and he needs to keep her inside before sunrise hits. Otherwise, she'll be lost forever. It's like, it's like, in a way for her, like vampire and all, because, not really, just like being allergic to the sunlight and it'll kill her. And yeah, because when Anton a little earlier saw what his sister was doing, however, Natalia unintentionally just struck at her brother and causing him to, hit a wardrobe and it crashed on him. Just, yeah, very brutally. Just like, yeah, it was not pleasant. And yeah, because how severe the strike was where it fell on top of him, he does ultimately die from his wounds. Yeah. And thus, Batman would go searching for Natalia, and whom, at one point Natalia does knock over a tree, and when she, because chasing the orphan, got away, he got away from Natalia, and Batman, well, overhearing it, would chase after them, and intent on trying to save the day, Batman, because, he would get there just in time to stop her from draining the child, but, well, he would break the news that, unfortunately, Anton had died by her hands, and just Natalia just feeling heartbroken by this, because it was nothing intentional of her, and she didn't realize that what she did to her older brother would be very severe, because with the wardrobe, wardrobe shelf just landing on him and all the above, just, yeah. And with her just being upset, and as the sun rises, Natalia begins to, of course, burn on account of the sunlight. Batman, he refuses to let her suffer this fate and would snatch her up, and taking her under his wing, covering her up with his cape, and taking her to a hospital. Yep. And thankfully, the other kids, they successfully recovered, and with them being in the hospital, yeah. And Natalia, well, what's now happened and what is going to happen next with Natalia? Well, her being in a secured section of the wing for guidance, yeah. And at the same time, well, after that came to an end with the carnival, Natalia, we would then come back to Dent, whom decides to undermine Thorn, but unfortunately, he has acid thrown in his face, and thus he would turn into Two-Face. And that's how the episode ends. That just being the beginning of what would happen next in the last 2 remaining episodes. Oh, man. I wonder how you guys felt when that happened. And with it happening in the first season, Harvey turning into Two-Face, and for that very appropriately happening at the very end of what's left in the first season. Yeah, man, I tell ya, the third to last episode of Season 1 of Batman Caped Crusader, Episode 8, Nocturne, that was another good episode. I had a good time with this one, with what happens in this episode, Natalia being the antagonist, technically, with knowing what she's like, and the abilities that she does, and in order to survive, and, in some ways, she's not really a bad person, like, this is what she has to do in order to survive, but with whatever's gonna come for her next, hopefully it goes very well. All the other characters that appear, from Anton, Natalia's older brother, Julie, the orphan kids, they were good as well, seeing the members of the carnival, the carnies, as they're called, everything that was going on in this episode, and with what was going on with Dent, and at the very end of the episode, holy crap, just, yeah, just again, Episode 8, Nocturne, another excellent episode. But now, with us coming straight into the last 2 remaining episodes. Alright, so, here we go. Episode Episode 9, the second to last episode of Season 1, titled The Killer Inside Me. Description / the story. After Harvey Dent's accident, both Batman and Bruce Wayne must work to stop the DA on his quest for the wrong sort of justice. So, the start of this episode, we would see Harvey presented as the new mayor of Gotham City. However, all of this turns out to be a dream. Yeah, because when we start to hear some of the crowd members, like, pointing out his face and, he's a monster and all that, yeah, it was all a dream. And with Dent waking up and to find that half of his face, of course, being bandaged up, and, with his dreams of being mayor have gone up in flames. Yep, sadly, it all went downhill. And Dent, well, staying in his apartment, angry and depressed for, depressed but also desperate for vengeance against all those who wronged him. Among those in the firing line is the new acting district attorney by the name of Peter Mitchell. Yep. So then, 2 weeks later, Gordon, being very pissed off that the police have nothing on Dent's acid attack, and Detective Montoya would contemplate whether Dent was into dirty deals, which, of course, we know of. Us, the audience, have been seeing at times throughout this season. But everyone, well, they rest on the idea of this was specifically linked to the election to get him out the picture, yeah. And Bruce, well, we would then see him as himself, just Bruce, showing up to see Dent and deciding to take him out for a meal. And, him believing that this is the right thing to get Dent back in the swing of things, yeah. Because it's understandable with what Bruce is trying to do and being a very good, loyal friend to Dent. However, in the case of Harvey, well, this isn't really good for him, because, yeah, he's not really in the mood to eat, and then he would grow paranoid, distrusting everyone around him, yeah, because thinking that everybody in the room, and maybe say the entire city, is against him. And, yeah, and Bruce also having another agenda here and wanting to find out what Dent knows about his attacker. And Harvey eventually would lose his temper and would rip off his bandages right in the restaurant and in front of everyone to see, and tormenting a poor waitress, and who ends up crying. And yeah, because the rage in Dent, and when he's up in that poor waitress's face, eventually he would leave after Bruce realizes that Dent is very much a broken man. Yeah, and that poor waitress, because she was just doing her job, and man, because, makes me want to hug her. Wouldn't you concur? Yeah. Well, back at the Batcave, where Bruce, as Batman, he would, Alfred would question the mortality of using Dent while he's so broken like this. In fact, because, yeah, Dent deciding to begin dishing out his own morality and going after a crook in the streets, and by shooting him in the leg, and the victim refusing to bet the guy's life on a coin flip. Yep, and hence, of course, the outcome. Oh yes, on account of the character of Harvey Dent. And Dent's real motive here being to find Thorne and his cronies. Yep, his goons and all. And the first step to that is Tony Zito, and after questioning Emil, Dent would beat him to a pulp and just, yeah, would head off to find the crime boss. Yeah, that didn't go so well on account of Emil, and yeah, and especially because, when he meets those that he questions, and one of them just, just calling him a freak, yeah, things do get ugly. You should have kept your mouth shut after that, so you should just let Harvey walk off, but you didn't. You brought it on yourself. You made Harvey lose his shit. Yeah, so, yeah, Thorne, because when Thorne is informed by this, he's not bothered, though. And just believing that Dent won't be able to get near him through all of this, because Thorne's got an entire, facility and with a lot of men serving for him. He should be in good hands, or at least that's what he thinks. Yeah. Then Dent, he would find Tony Zito quite easily and would tie him up, and after he after Dent first, confronted his ex-girlfriend, as she calls herself, when she would tell him about Zito and all that, and with him finding Zito, tying him up, and, to a chair, and in the middle of a room, and just, then pouring alcohol all around before lighting with a match. And Dent, would hightail it out, and, because shocked that he managed to do this, and he would then drive away Batman, on his trail, but just unable to get near him either when he jumps, on his car. He unfortunately loses Dent. And then Batman, he would then feel responsible for setting Dent on this path and remaining vigilant. And determined still to stop Harvey, no matter what the case is. And as for Thorn, well, finding out about Zito's death, and even Batman, because he didn't get a chance to save Zito. And, well, by this point, unfortunately for Zito, that's the end and demise of him being burned to death in his apartment. Then would set out, and bolster security with what Thorn does. Unfortunately, Dent did get the upper hand here, and after shutting off the lights and, worked to eliminate each of the guards one by one, he managed to do so. Dent would speak to Zito and tell him he wants justice, and calling himself the judge, the jury, and executioner, and Thorn's son, Matthew, because, we saw this early on where Thorn and his son, Matt, were watching a sports game, and, well, this is great to see where Thorn, he does not want to see his son get hurt, because Matthew's showing up and would get in his father's way. And this hesitation then manages to severe as a distraction for Thorn long enough for Batman, of course, to show up, blast through the rooftop, and confront both of them. But just again, where Matthew was willing to save his father, and Thorn, he did not want to see his son get killed. Now, that's a good thing. That's a good thing to come from Thorn, where it shows that he's a good, caring father to his son. Yeah. But anyways, because when eventually Batman manages to stop Dent, and where, Dent, in the end, he breaks down because a good part of him comes back, and just, he can't believe the monstrosity he has just now done. And in this room, where all of these bodies that he has killed, and with Dent being arrested for his crimes, and, well, following a brief altercation with Batman, his lawyer would show up to see him, but, he didn't even have a lawyer in the first place, and when, one of the guards told him that, his lawyer's here, because he's confused, and just so happens to be none other than Barbara. Oh, out of everybody, because I think it would be obvious, right? Because knowing this situation right now, and for Dent, it would have to be, say, Barbara, because from what we've been seeing between those two characters throughout the show, they are not on good terms, leading up to this. Then by the 10th and final episode, my God, just... and I you know exactly, you concur, right? Oh, man, just, The 9th and second to last episode of Season 1, the killer inside me. And technically, it's obvious, right? Where even though it's not in the title, like Part 1, Part 2, it's not really a two-parter, but it technically is. With what happens in the 9th episode, where after the events right at the very end of episode 8, Harvey gets acid thrown in his face. By the next one, he becomes Two-Face. And, they don't really say the name Two-Face in the show. Nor not really like, say, in Dark Knight. To my knowledge. And, you would know this too. But point being is that, because with what happens in episode 9, Bruce trying to help out Dent, but nothing really works. And where Harvey just being blinded by the dark side and evil part of him emerges. But, like, say, when a good part of him emerges too, and he just can't believe, like, the murders he's committed at the very end of the episode when he tried to take down Thorn, and then when he gets himself in jail, Barbara showing up at the very end, Bruce/Batman trying his damnedest to do whatever it takes to help out Dent. Just, wow. I tell ya. The 9th episode of Batman Caped Crusader Season 1, excellent. But, yep, it gets better by the next and final episode. So here we go, guys. Up to the 10th and final episode of Season 1 of Batman Caped Crusader, titled Savage Night. Description / the story. The attempt of Barbara Gordon and Batman to keep Harvey Dent safe until he testifies in court leads to an all-out war between Gotham's heroes and villains. Alright, here we go, because yep, with, this episode picking what we just left off in episode 9, yeah, because with the aftermath of Harvey's activities, Barbara now reluctantly showing up to try and help him, and with her recognizing that someone needs to help him, and his conflicting moral compass could be swayed yet to doing the right thing. Yeah, hopefully so, if it all turns out good. And Barbara, with her deciding to flip a coin for Dent's fate, heads and tails, and using his own double-headed coin, no less, and, agreeing that she'll be his lawyer, and Barbara imploring him not to talk to anyone, but of course, Thorn is not going to take the threat to his life lightly. Yeah. So, yeah, then, Dent, having been kept at Arkham Asylum for the time being, and despite not holding out too well, Dent does recognize there are others worse off than him. And Barbara, believing that, he's a victim here too, and given the acid attack, of course, and with him working as a DA for over a decade, that must be something on his record to help, and fingers crossed for these characters and with what Barbara's thinking, and if it all goes well. And yeah, because there was a moment, and with Barbara witnessing, because again, with Dent recognizing there are others worse off than him, and where he actually helped out this one guy in Arkham whom dropped his plush toy, and he just wanted it back, and Harvey being very kind to hand it back to him. So yeah, a bit of good right there in Harvey with what he does. And by the way, cannot forget to acknowledge the design and look of Harvey / Two-Face, part of his face, how it's done in Caped Crusader, very well executed. I mean, of course, it's got to stay very truthful and loyal to what the character of Harvey is. All these characters, as I explained and said early on. Yeah. So yeah, and with Dietrich Bader, the more we get of him voicing Harvey Dent, and when we see a part of Harvey being Two-Face and all, the dark side version of him, it's just excellent. Dietrich Bader, he's the man. He's the dude. Yeah, definitely. Speaking more of Dent, he would scrug it off, and yeah, by explaining that it's not easy given that, he believes he's weak and not helpful to anyone. And Barbara seeing Dent just being a broken man and just trying just the very best to, find a way to strike a deal with the new DA. Even because things did get heated with Dent just, the dark side version of him just coming through him and, just saying horrible things to Barbara, but then he does quickly snap out of it and he apologizes. And it's understandable, and on account of what Barbara views him, just, broken man and so on. There you go. Well, Batman, once again showing up and handing over his number to Barbara. Yep, once again he showed up at her office and giving the specific phone number she needs to have in order to contact Batman. Yep, and with her looking for answers in her office that night and imploring her to ring when she gets the chance. Yeah, because the more details that Batman gives, to Barbara. And as for just Bruce Wayne, well, with him arriving to see Harvey and him apologizing for the dinner incident in the previous episode and trying to convince him not to give up and to see the light at the end of the tunnel. But Dent, you know, he's unfortunately not the same man that he once was, and that Bruce thought he once was, though. Yeah. And as, you know, he would scum off his fate and refusing to get any professional treatment for his case, well, later that same evening, while Harvey is being moved, and Barbara's there as well, you know, to see him being transported, someone out of nowhere hijacks the transfer and would take off with him. They whipped out, they threw something, you know, gas, and yeah, where they would take Harvey and they would drive off. And unfortunately, whom it is, and the more we see of what they do in the first season, yep, turning out, of course, to be, of course, Flass and Bullock. Those dickheads is, yeah. And it's, well, this being not a breakout pre-seed, but actually, you know, with that they refer to as the Big Sleep. Yeah. And Dent, well, working well to wind the two men up, and as the car would tip over, because with what Harvey specifically says to Bullock, just trying to get Bullock to just now butt heads with Flass, and technically Flass is the main lead, but yeah, with what Dent said, which led to, you know, a bit of a fight between Bullock and Flass, leading to the car being tipped over. And Barbara, well, she was following them, and yeah, when she showed up, you know, retrieving Harvey and, you know, with her handcuffing herself to him and not wanting Dent to be left up to no good. Yeah, unlike what he did in the last episode. Yeah, not letting that happen again. And Barbara, she would first phone Gordon, her father, to inform him, like, what's going on and needing his help. Then she would ring up Batman using his phone number at a payphone. And yeah, because telephone booth / payphone, kind of the same thing. And yeah, because they would all agree to meet down by the docks. Yeah, because when she called up Batman, Alfred responded, but then Alfred hooked her up to Batman. And thus, we would see them all at the docks. And Bullock and Flass, well, they would also show up with a bunch of their goons. And in the thick fog, well, Detective Montoya alongside with Gordon, both being there and all together, because yeah, they want Dent to testify against Thorne, and by taking his crime family down, yeah. But Dent, of course, you know, with how he feels about this, not being sure that this will work, but yeah, but even before they can elaborate and hash out the details, Thorne's men show, and yeah, a big firefight would break out. But right before that happened, because with what Batman specifically said to Dent, just having enough of the bullshit, even Gordon concurred, and even if it meant that it would risk his job in the police department. Yeah, with what they specifically said, they're not wrong. Yeah. So, with some of Thorne's men showing up, and when Flass, yeah, appearing to shoot Barbara, because, yeah, with each of them having split up, and, yeah, and, well, Dent, because he even pulled Barbara aside, because just pleading her to let him go, because they are whom he wants, and just, I mean, just let it be that. But Barbara, she's just flat out refusing to let him go that easily, and will not uncuff one another. But yeah, because with Flass appearing, and where he was this close to shooting Barbara, Dent stands in the way and takes the bullet. He takes the bullet for her. When I watched that episode, I'm sure probably some of you might have had the same reaction too, where I was like, what? Like, we're killing Harvey Dent already? And seeing as how this is the first season, but granted, this is not the first time that Harvey Dent in anything Batman has died, like most prominently in Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight film. Yeah, you know. So, yeah, best example there. But anyways, so yeah, Harvey taking the bullet, and, well, Batman showing up, and when he would confront Flass, and where, yeah, because he would get a hold of Flass's gun, and when it seemed like that Batman was going to shoot at him, we cut off. We don't see it, but we hear the gunshots. We see the reaction of Barbara. Well, Batman did not shoot Flass in the face or anywhere around his body. He shot, all around him, like where the boxes were, the crates. That being the only thing he shot at, just putting holes in the crates behind him. Yeah, so with him choosing not to shoot Flass dead, and in the heat of the moment, and showing a direct contrast, and just how Harvey would deal with the situation, like I said, because how Batman shot around, Flass, and then, because Batman, of course, doing this, and it takes care of it, where a big punch, punching him right in the square of the jaw, and Flass is down. And even right before that happened, when we saw Bullock, he was gun pointed at Gordon. So it's totally obvious by this point, Bullock and Flass, their days of being policemen and all, they're done. They're done for. It's over for the two of them, right? Yeah, good riddance, you assholes. Not being very loyal to the law and doing their duties, rightfully so, as policemen. No. Yeah. Well, and after they were taken down, Dent, because, with the last words he says to Barbara, and just, why he did it, and with what he says to Barbara, and that being the last word he says, Barbara's name, Harvey does die, in Barbara's arms. And while Gordon, he implores Batman to leave before the rest of the PD show up, because if he remains, then Gordon is going to have to bring in Batman. And of course, Batman, exiting the scene. And when Bruce/Batman arrives back at the Batcave, Alfred offers some words of wisdom, and of course, knowing Alfred, that's what he would do, knowing good old Alfred, allowing Batman to remain ever vigilant against the rising tide of crime in Gotham. And after calling him Pennyworth all season, I almost did forget to point that out, because a good majority where Bruce always calls him by his last name, Pennyworth, Batman, right up to here, eventually calls his butler by his first name, Alfred, in a very sweet, touching moment, thanking him. Thank you, Alfred, all the above. That's great to see. And right as he's about to disembark in his Batcave. And, well, with what's left in the 10th and final episode of the first season, well, we would come back to Thorn, and with, what he's heard, and on account of Harvey having been dead and such, well, Batman does throw a batarang at Thorn from afar, right where he's sitting in his chair, right next to him in his chair, hitting the side, and, just reminding Thorn that this fight is far from over. Indeed so. But it doesn't stop there, because one last scene we get where we come to this shed where we see these poor people, like they're tied up, and these creepy grin on their faces, and one of them just laughing so contagious, and when he dies, we get our first glimpse of the Clown Prince of Crime himself. And where he delivers the last line of Season 1 in the 10th and final episode. Perfect. We see him in the shadows. We see only just his eyes. And I think it was going to be obvious that we were going to see Joker at some point. And it's great to see that all throughout the first season, we never once got Joker. But clearly, because by Season 2, we're going to. And Joker, right here, being voiced by good old John DiMaggio, and this being not the first time that DiMaggio has voiced the Clown Prince of Crime. If you know, you know. But, that's how the first season ends, and with the 10th and final episode, holy crap, just, woo! I tell ya, the first season of Batman Caped Crusader, it was amazing. And the 10th and final episode of Season 1, Savage Night, It was a great way to end off the first season, and by the second to last episode up to here, where we see Harvey Dent as his alter ego Two-Face, but the fact that at the very end of the 10th and final episode, Harvey dies, just... yeah, did anybody really see that coming? Yeah. But with what else goes on in the 10th and final episode, yeah, because between Batman, Barbara, Gordon, and Montoya trying to help out Dent in any ways possible, but at the same time, we've got Thorne's goons, we've got Bullock and Flass on Harvey's tail, this madness and an all-out war that happens, and when it happens at the docks, just, man, I tell you, it was amazing from beginning to end. The 10th and final episode, it did not disappoint. It satisfied, I'm sure, all of us, and with us getting a tease of Joker, and for the next season, excellent. Well put. Yeah. Overall, the 10th and final episode of Season 1 of Batman Caped Crusader, Savage Night. Awesome. And yeah, with all that being said, that's all she wrote. That's our first season of this Batman animated show. Yeah. Season 1 of Batman Caped Crusader. What a great way for this new Batman animated show to begin, right? It was amazing. A big disappointment and mistake on HBO Max's part for not wanting to do anything with this, passing this on, yeah. But good for Amazon Prime to pick this up, for us to see it in all of its glory, to see the light of day, and for it to be picked up some more, with what, say, Bruce Timm, J.J. Abrams, Matt Reeves, everybody that was involved behind the scenes, with what they wrote for the scripts, the directors, all of them did a fantastic job. Great cast of voice talents in this Batman animated show. Hamish Linklater, Jason Watkins, Dietrich Bader, John DiMaggio, Eric Morgan Stewart, Gary Anthony Williams, Michelle C. Bonilla, Crystal Joy Brown, Cedric Yarbrough, Gray Delia, Bumper Robinson, Kimberly Brooks, Jeff Bennett, Jamie Chung, James Arnold Taylor, Corey Burton, Jason Marsden, Vincent Piazza, Kari Walgreen, Roger Craig Smith, Tom Kenny, Christina Ricci, Minnie Driver. The list goes on. Just like, yeah. All of the voice cast in all 10 episodes, they did a heck of a great job. McKenna Grace, Raid Scott, just to mention a few more. Yeah. Josh Keaton, him too. Just, yeah, Peter Jessup, just, yeah, need I go on. The entire voice cast was great. The animation, the look and style for this piece of Batman animation material, the look and design of the characters, the music and score, each of these episodes with what they have to offer with their storylines, and with, yeah, the majority of Season 1 being connected, of course, yeah. I mean, some episodes that technically are their own episodes, but still, yeah. The action, the fights, the suspense, the unexpected moments, all that happens throughout all 10 episodes leading up to what happens at the very end. Yeah, just need I go on? It's amazing how this Batman animated show has turned out with its first season and beyond, yeah. Overall, Batman Season 1 of Batman Caped Crusader was excellent. And I'm giving Season 1 of Batman Caped Crusader 10 out of 10 stars. Obvious? Yeah. Just, yeah, 10 out of 10 stars for the first season of Batman Caped Crusader. And what about you guys? What did you think of the first season of Batman Caped Crusader? How long did you follow this Batman animated show when hearing about its announcement, it being developed, when at first it probably wouldn't see the light of day because on account of HBO Max, but thank goodness, hallelujah, Amazon Prime picked it up. We now finally saw it in all of its glory, and with the continuing, which were some of your favorite episodes, and with the characters, the voice performances, stuff that you did not expect. Is Batman Caped Crusader now in your list of some of your favorite pieces of Batman animation? Yeah? Yeah, and, you know, just need I go on? And also, like, you know, any other, like, pieces of, like, Batman material, like, yeah, because as I mentioned at the very start, where Amazon Prime also having the Bat Family animation show and all that. Yeah, that too. Just, still, need I go on? Again, overall, what did you think of the first season of Batman Caped Crusader with what all I've had to say, my review, and yeah, what did you think of my review of Season 1 of Batman Caped Crusader? Leave comments and give this review video a like, as always. And with all that being said, guys, thank you very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed my review of Season 1 of Batman Caped Crusader. More review videos are coming your way. They're going to be awesome. Keep looking forward, and I will see you guys in the next video / review. Take care, and until Season 2, peace out.